hold on. Tricky screwed up.
Yeah, he did.
This entire time, nobody's heard a word we said on Twitch.
What?
Saber, can you hear us now?
Wow. First time, Tricky. Well,
No.
how long you been doing this show?
Well, no. In my defense here, we are debuting the new overlay, and I set it up, and I set up all the pictures and all the trophy cards and everything like that. I forgot to add the microphone to the scene.
Interesting. Well, it's funny because on my screen, the overlay makes it look like Matt is hiding under the covers, and you just see his eyes. Like it's...
For anybody who doesn't know, because I can't use the camera and Skype and Twitch at the same time, I put the overlay up so they can see the overlay. All right, so I guess I'll have to put a disclaimer out on the YouTube video. First 5 minutes, you can't hear us.
Just put this sensor, like just the sound, just constantly censor it out. Kind of like.
Would you say the waves of sound?
Maybe I should just do like 5 minutes of Starscream.
No. Someone's already tried to bring up Soundwave this episode, and it was rejected, so...
So any further mentions are squashed?
Surely you can find like a 5-minute clip of Starscream on there just doing Starscream stuff.
You know, in all seriousness, I tried looking up. I was trying to go in there and find, world's largest collection of sound waves, and it's not exactly the easiest thing to find, and I'm not finding very much. So if anybody out there knows what
if you are in fact the owner of the Guinness World Records greatest Starscream army, please let Matt know. Get into contact with Trophy Horse.
That's right.
I mean, I imagine like that's like the some world record for like how many chicken McNuggets someone's eaten in their life. It's just so obscure that you're never going to find an answer, even on the internet.
That's the issue. Is I try looking on the Guinness World Records site, and it's like, oh well, here's the category for collection and achievements and things like that. And yeah, I see some like stupid shit like how many hot dogs you could fit in your mouth at once. I'm like, So there's some people out there who aren't submitting for that would probably be able to win.
So how many hot dogs can you fit in your mouth at one time?
One very small one.
Oh, there's a joke to be made there.
So a cocktail weenie? You can fit a cocktail weenie in there?
He said cocktail.
I also said weenie trick. Are you going to focus on the cocktail?
No, you just talking right over my Beavis and Butthead laugh.
He's going to score.
He said laugh.
All right, let's do our updated trophy count. I am level 908, total trophies of 30,619 with 847 platinums.
Alex is at level 503 with a total trophy count of 9,784 and a platinum count of 169 in 168 games.
I think you should just embrace the 69 for at least one episode. Yield is...
What? Didn't I just embrace it by saying 169?
You should have just said I have 169 platinums and not have to do 168 games.
Well, I'd be a dirty liar like you then, Tricky, and I can't do that.
You think about it, he gets to do the 69 twice. He gets to have 169 platinums, and then next time it's going to be, I got 170 platinums in 169 games.
Yeah, see, we're doubling up. Darrell gets it.
He's actually maximized. It's like a min-max thing. He's actually, he's got to figure it out.
Double your pleasure, double your fun.
Yield is level 510 with 10,152 trophies and 188 platinums in 188 games. Matt?
Level 220 with 1,311 trophies, 0 platinums, and I don't know how many games. 0 games, I suppose.
Sid is level 890, total trophies of 27,012 with 843 plats. Yes, that's still 4 behind me. And Darrell.
I'm a level 728 with a total trophy count of 19,400 flat, which is actually pretty solid right there. And then 421 platinum trophies in 1,310 games.
All right, so Alex, I have the unfortunate duty. I was told I had to call you out on the show. So
for what?
Apparently, you decided to record instead of spending time with the in-laws.
Okay, well, first of all, I did not know how long they were going to be staying. I thought maybe they would go. Ashley's parents are in town. We had a graduation yesterday for her eldest son. He graduated from Eastern High School, and they're in town. I did not know if they'd be staying all weekend, and so they're going back tomorrow morning. I've spent the entire weekend with them. had a good time, but I didn't want to not record so that Darrell didn't be like, oh, Alex ran away from the conversation. He didn't want to face me in debate. So I'm like, yeah, I'll be on. You know?
He gets it.
I didn't,
man.
I didn't want, he called out yield earlier, and I definitely didn't want that.
I promised her because she promised to keep you away from the Rangers game today. So
that didn't work.
And
So I actually did end up watching the Rangers game starting in the third quarter, but we went out to a restaurant here in town, and they just had the game on. I didn't have them turn it on; they just had it on, so I was watching it.
Well,
and guess what, Tricky? Who won? The Rangers won.
Well, just for the record, it wasn't the third quarter; it's called the third period.
The third period. Okay, yes, I know the third period.
Dude, it's funny you say that. We have our third period in this house right now as well. My lady golden retriever just started hers.
What?
So we've got my wife, my daughter, and our golden all synced up.
This show's going off the rails. I can just tell it now.
Tricky doesn't even know what to say. He doesn't even.
Oh.
So Tricky, when does your period start?
It started 2 days ago.
Now.
Well, that explains some things.
We're gonna airdrop it to him.
Oh my God, where are we descended to? All right, let's
Where
get
we
it.
normally descend to.
Let's get into what we're playing. Darrell, we'll start with you since I caught you mid drink and just now you have to stumble.
I'm playing some WWE 2K23 and 24. So on my PS5, I've got 23. On my PS4 over here in the corner, I've got 24. No rhyme or reason as to why, but that's what I've got going on. But the last 3 WWE games have been so freaking good. Alex, I know you've got a history with some of these WWE 2K games, and I think you put yourself through, you went to hell and back, platinuming, what, 2016 or 17?
17, yeah. Like I had to win 50 matches online to get one of the trophies, Golden Boy or something like that. And it was just all the WWE games, because Nitro got the Platinum Trophy in W2K13 this year or last year. Yeah. But it's always kind of hellacious to get those Platinums.
Yeah, I'm working on, so 22, my factions mode was shut down online before I finished it. So I got every trophy in 22 but the online, my factions, which I think are better than the online multiplayer, just fighting randoms, hoping that connectivity doesn't suck. But they're so grindy and they're so obnoxious. On 23, I'm trying to finish up my factions before it goes offline because, we only get like 2 years on those. And then on 24, we got it the WrestleMania weekend. And so we actually were watching WrestleMania on one TV and we had 2K24 on the other. So that's why on my PS4, that's why that save file is there. That's why I play it there. And so I'm just chipping away at it. I got a year, so I got some time. My factions is not my favorite thing to play. So just kind of working my way through it. I beat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade Wrath of the Mutants, and I'm doing the grind on that one. It's a fun game until you try to go for the platinum. It's a bit grindy, and I don't love it. It's got a very high completion rate, which I find odd because it's got a 31% platinum rate, but 2 of the trophies are annoying, like super annoying. One of them is getting high score. Like I just can't figure out how to get a high score. Like I've gotten up to 3rd place, but like taking first is like you got to beat the whole level without getting hit, and keeping a combo multiplier going. That's just, I don't know. I haven't found any like tips or tricks online yet to really help me break the mold, but so it seems like I'm going to have to play through one of these levels 50 plus times just to grind out all the power ups. So I'm working on that. I've dabbled in a bunch of just random games. But I guess the one I've played the most recently outside of those games right there is Resident Evil 6. And I was just in a rut. I haven't found a game that really clicked and also didn't require like hyper focus to finish, And like I've beaten Resident Evil 6 multiple times, but on the PlayStation 4 version, I haven't beaten and done nearly as much of that as I could. So I was like, my wife actually suggested, because I was just kind of floundering around trying to find something to play. She was like, why don't you play Resident Evil? That always like helps you relax and just kind of whatever. I was like, you know what? It's a good idea, but I didn't want to play 7 or 8 or something super like intense. I kind of wanted to play one of the more action-based ones. So I went for 6. And revisiting 6, I mean, this is probably my 5th time going through the game. The story's all over the place. The characters are wildly overwritten and underwritten, like in the same time. Like there's just, I don't know what kind of crack they were on when they made this game. It is extremely fun to play, but like it is the farthest thing from a Resident Evil game. And as many times as I go through it, I'm just like, these guys were just like doing lots of drugs in the studio making this game. But I'm having a good time with it. So that's pretty much me.
Is it the only Resident Evil game that stars both Leon Kennedy and Chris Redfield?
It is, and it was like set up and marketed as like the ultimate showdown, where these guys are going to finally not only cross paths, they're going to face off. All them, I think years and years ago, Donnie was on the show just like going off about how much of a missed opportunity it was. It was because you've never had these guys in the same game. These are the two most important characters in the franchise. The third one would be Jill. That would be the Resident Evil Trinity, essentially. And it's just, man, all the hype was so high. Resident Evil 5, although it was a much more of an action game than a survival horror game, story-wise, just did so much for the universe and had so much connective tissue. So we were going into 6, and this is the global outbreak. This is the one that really, like, everything has went to this point. Now it's going to be nuclear. And it was nuclear, all right. It was just freaking weird. But it's still fun. It's fun to play. And like, there's certain sections of each campaign in there that are just like, it's like, man, this could have been a really good game if it wasn't Resident Evil. If it was just like, something completely different, like Lost Planet or something like that, like Lost Planet 4. That would have been cool. But yeah, I'm having a good time with it, even though it drives me crazy going through the story and just the amount of missed opportunity.
Oh, sorry, I had to wake up. Alex, what are you playing, sir?
Well, pretty much the same stuff I've been playing. I want to try to get through everything that I'm playing to get to play Tunic. I need to remember to add that to my library. But Rocket League, haven't really played much Helldivers recently. Just kind of, Rocket League's doing a 2 times experience right now, so I've been focusing on that and Dave the Diver. So like Helldivers is still in the rotation, but just really haven't played it in maybe 5-6 days. But yeah, still loving Dave the Diver. I'm trying to think of anything new to say about the game, but yeah, I've gotten quite a few hours on that, so I'm sure I'll hopefully within the next week or so I'll pump out the platinum. But just loving the hell out of that game. So
you're gonna try Zao like I told you to.
What?
You're gonna try Zao like I told you to?
That's not. That's definitely not the game you told me. Like you.
Yeah, I told you Zao. It's a longer name to it. I don't remember the full name of it.
Kinzaro or something like that is also in there.
Yeah, hold on. I'll look it up.
Well, I just got done saying that I wanted to rush to play not rush, but like finish stuff up to play Tunic. So probably not gonna play that before I play Tunic. I'll probably play Tunic first. Yeah. But I may be willing to. Again, I think tricky that I didn't add it to my library when it was free on PlayStation Plus. So if I got to pay for it, I might have to be waiting a while for me to play that game. I do appreciate the recommendation. I think I forgot to add it.
It's told Tales of Kinzera Zao.
Okay, if it's I did add it and I can play it for free, then I'll probably hop on it sooner. But if I got to pay for it, I'm looking to save money now, which is why I'm playing so much. So many PlayStation Plus games. We're looking to play so many PlayStation Plus games, so might have to wait on that one.
Aren't you glad you're a premium member?
Well, I could play these on extra because Tunic is on basic, or essential, so I could just get that for the first tier membership, and then
never mind.
No, first of all, no. Last week I got done. I was complaining about the classics catalog additions to PlayStation Plus Premium, so I really don't think you really need to own Premium at this point because the classics collection just has sucked. What they've added has sucked. So
you didn't like Killzone?
I mean, I didn't. So I played Killzone 2 and Killzone 3. Whichever Killzone are you? Is it just the original one?
No. So on the classics,
Liberation, right?
They've put a ton of PSPs up. It's Liberation. So it's like a isometric it's a freaking banger of a game. It's really, really great.
I know they added one of the Resistance games from the PSP.
That's on there too, and that's arguably one of the best Resistance games. It's definitely better than the Vita one. And I just went through and platinumed Resistance on the classics. Those two games right there are phenomenal. And then if you like Siphon Filter, so I've platinumed Siphon Filter 1, Resistance, and I'm sitting on the last trophy for Killzone just because we got this big trophy competition coming up at the end of the like in August of this year. So I've been banking a lot of platinums just to like pop one trophy if I need emergency points to keep us in the game. So each team member we've all got about a dozen or so platinums, just kind of like down to the last trophy. But dude, those three games right there alone, in my opinion, have been worth it. Then you got Hot Shots Golf and Jet Moto, stuff like that. So there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, but like with the Classics Collection, like I'm talking about, because I played a lot of those last year. Like I played the Twisted Metals, I played War of the Monsters. Like I played a lot of those games. So if you actually look at what they've added since they added Twisted Metal last summer, because I played those last summer, the volume of games has not been that deep. They haven't really added a ton to it. And I feel like not only for game preservation, but also because the premium tier is the highest tier, they got to start adding more classics.
So I started G Police this past week. I didn't talk about it just because I didn't pop any trophies. I didn't play it very long. That's one of those games that I always wanted to play, but I've never actually had the opportunity to play it. A little, not really my style of game, but I thought it was cool that it was there. You got Pursuit Force 1 and 2 on there. Those are freaking awesome. And then we just got 2 Extreme this month, which I thought was fun. I downloaded Worms Pinball and Worms Armageddon, but they didn't have trophy support, so I immediately deleted them because there's just too many games to play something without trophies. There's a lot of stuff on. I personally have been a big fan of premium, but they've put games on there that really speak to my interest, and they've done a heavy PSP focus. And as a PSP collector and someone who really, really is nostalgic for PSP, I've been super happy with it. But I understand that a lot of people are looking for some of the bigger titles to come out, and then I've dug it.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you've had, like, anyone who just pops on there today will probably find a lot to play, but, outside of, your specific case, like, I think that people might not necessarily be, if you've been with PlayStation Plus for a while, you might have run out of things to play on there, and, that's just kind of, I wish they would focus on adding more to that than, say, the extras catalog, because, again, it is the dense, you're paying the most for that, so I feel like the greatest support should be for the premium tier.
From what I hear, there's only one studio. They hired a porthouse studio that ports these games and adds trophy support. So it seems like the reason why it's kind of like 1 month you'll have a few and then the next month you might not have any is because it's all coming from one place. That they don't have a major studio doing it. That it's just one small one, and I can't remember the name of the place, but I think it's only like 3 people. It's not huge at all.
All right, Matt, what have you been playing, sir?
So, got through a bunch of games on my log this week. I ended up picking up Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door remake on the Switch because I had the Nintendo Switch Online tickets, so I got a little bit of a discount there. Started that. Its game looks friggin' beautiful, even on an LCD Switch. I can only imagine what it would look like on an OLED Switch. Also, I went back in because Carrion added a holiday mode recently. I don't remember when, but it was in there, and it's just an extra set of missions you do in the game, which is a lot of fun. More Hades 2, just playing a couple rounds in that to get through, earn some extra gear, as well as more Day of the Diver. Alex, you'll be happy to know I am in Chapter 6. And I got through the Godzilla DLC today, which is freaking fantastic.
A word to everybody again: the Godzilla DLC is free. It's out now. I'm also in Chapter 6, but I have not downloaded the Godzilla DLC. I'm just kind of focusing on getting the Platinum Trophy first, and then once I get the Platinum Trophy, I'm going to add the Godzilla stuff to it. Because there's also Dredge DLC for this, which is also free. So there is a Dredge type component to the game as well. But
Yeah, I haven't seen that, and I would have thought that was already in the game, so I haven't come across any of it yet.
Let me ask you a question, Matt, since you're so far, because they have added new kind of mechanics to the game. Like there's like stealth sections with Dave. Do you feel like, I don't know, I feel like some of those, specifically the stealth sections, like I'm not a huge fan of. None of it lasts too long, but I feel like I enjoy the game as it is, and I don't really enjoy the stealth aspect as much. Did they, like any of the stuff they added later in the game, do you find yourself not liking as much?
I really haven't formed an opinion because they happen so quickly and it's over and it kind of hasn't been reintroduced yet. So it's, I'm 20 hours into the game and they still keep introducing new things that are popping up. I'm like, okay, cool. But then they're gone as quickly as they are. So to me, they don't wear out their welcome and they're so short. One might ask, why are they in the game to begin with? But it breaks it up at least a little bit. And the thing I've been finding out when you look at like the achievement list, a lot of people kind of dropped off the game soon after they got to the village, so to speak. And people kind of really just like the sushi and the catching fish portion of it. So,
yeah,
if that's a big thing, get to the end of the game because there's end game cleanup to do as well.
And when you think you've done everything, like caught as many fish as you can, or defeated all the boss creatures, nope, you haven't, because there's more.
Yeah, I fought another boss creature today, a giant mantis shrimp with
that's that is my favorite boss fight in that game. I love the mantis shrimp.
It took me a couple tries, but less tries than the dump truck hermit crab.
I hated that thing. I hated that stupid hermit crab. Like, and look, it was cool, but just aiming for its little eyes and trying to stun it was extremely annoying.
But the, like you said, and then there's perfectionists. You can go in and try to get 3 stars of every fish, and there's still plenty of fish I haven't seen. So it's hunting them down. That's entertaining.
You know how to get the 3 stars, right?
Depends on the fish. I know some you have to net, some you have to capture.
Yeah, because some of them you like can put to sleep and like use the drone to come pick them up, and like if they're still alive, it gives you a better overall score. But there's some fish that you kill in one shot, you don't have a chance to tranquilize them, so you got to catch them with a net gun, the smaller fish.
Yes. Yeah, and I've upgraded my net gun to a medium net gun, but I can never seem to get more than like 2 fish in a net.
I think you can go up to 7 or something like that. Or
it allows up to 7. I can never capture that many. They're all spread out.
Oh, thank goodness there's not a trophy for that. Catch 7 fish in one net.
Oh, I can only
pulling
imagine.
My hair out.
You might get that at the night where all those little spine fish are attacking you in swarms.
Those damn things.
Yes. Which I did. Yeah, I got swarmed today. I just started swinging my knife. I'm like, get away.
That only does so much. It only does so much.
And the final game, which is really one I wanted to talk about, it's a new game that came out. It's called Crypt Master. It's a black and white game. It's on the PC, and you navigate through this world. The first thing you're met by is you're brought back to life as a set of 4 corpses, and you attack, you search, you interact with the world by typing words out. So if you go up to like a chest and you type the word chest, you're going to open it. If you go up to an altar, you're undead. You're brought back to life by this necromancer. And you go to this altar, which is meant to heal living people. You have to desecrate the altar to make it that it heals you now. And you could type various words and things to desecrate it. And your imagination is what takes away here. So it's really interesting. The art style is great. The voice acting is great. It's only like $25. It's fairly straightforward. And, one of the things that you have to do is you have to go in and rob a tomb. And there's this NPC in a cage, and you're trying to get past this watchful eye. And you go up to the NPC and go, how do I get by this eye? And he goes, oh, just, he's not that big of a deal. Just go tell him that you're robbing the joint. So you go up to the eye, you type up robbery, and the eye goes, why would you tell me that? No, you can't come in. Are you kidding me? And you have to go back to this NPC, and he's laughing his ass off because he's like, I didn't think you'd do that. Wow, okay. But like many other adventure games, it has its own little card game that you play. It's called Whatever. And what you do is it gives you cards, and the cards have names. and along the bottom of your screen are letters, and you have to choose 2 letters at a time based on a grid. And what happens is, as you fill up, if you choose a letter that's in the name of one of your cards, you do an attack. It's a point of attack per letter. But then if you fill up the name on the card, after a couple rounds, you get the benefit of that card, whether it's healing, doing extra attacks, getting extra letters. It kind of becomes that Gwent or that Hearthstone thing where it's just a game upon a game. And it's really interesting. And like I said, it came out recently. I heard things about it through a couple other podcasts, and I ended up pulling the trigger yesterday. And it's a lot of fun. So that's what I've been doing this week.
Nice.
All right. And I have been playing, obviously, Division 2. Played a little bit of X Defiant, which is...
the Division Heartland killer.
Why you gotta do that to me?
Oh, they gotta kill my boy.
Oh, look at Alex running back. Which is playing X Defiant is a little weird for me because it's the first person shooter. Play some Skull and Bones. Play some NASCAR Heat, some Helldivers 2, and obviously some Division 2.
It's a lot of live service you got going on there, Tricky.
Yeah. Oh, and Suicide Squad.
Ooh.
They just released season 2. So we have a update that kind of supports what Matt's been saying about it not lasting long. So remember how I told you?
Hold on. We've all said that. Matt put a number to it, but we've all said this game's not going to last that long.
Well,
this game was DOA.
So remember how I said that there was going to be a Brainiac each season? Well, apparently not, because there was a Brainiac in the main game. Then this season there was Chapter 1. There was a Brainiac, and now there's another Brainiac for Season 2 or Chapter 2. So they're going to be going through Brainiacs real quick if they keep up this pace. Now
I heard, isn't the Brainiac fight in Season 1 the same exact fight from the base game?
No. Because I haven't gotten to the latest Brainiac, but I will tell you that every Brainiac you fight mimics another superhero. So, like, last chapter, you had to fight a Brainiac that was styled after the Flash. This one, I assume, because it's Green Lantern based, you probably have to fight another Green Lantern Brainiac. So
It's still technically the same as a previous fight. It's just supposedly each universe they mimicked one of the heroes' powers.
Yeah, but see, like the Brainiac Flash fight was, while it was the same mechanics to beat him, the fight was entirely different because they incorporated Brainiac forces into the fight, where the Flash fight was just you fighting the Flash. So there is a little variance, but not much.
Is it fun though? I mean, like, are you enjoying the game?
I enjoy the game.
That's all that matters.
There's a lot of criticism that goes with it. Like, I don't remember exactly. I think it was Yield that said it, but he said something somebody said something along the lines of watching the villains fly across the map was a big turnoff. They're not flying across the map. The only person that really flies is Deadshot, and it's not unlimited. You only have a booster pack for a little bit. Just to give you a little background, when you start the game, the villains all break into the Hall of Justice and they steal powers from the Hall of Justice. So, like, Harley stole Batman's glider. Captain Boomerang stole the Flash's Speed Force. Lets him run around. King Shark, because he was stupid, stole the Mad Hatter's hat, which gives him no powers. But King Shark already can do large jumps. And Joker obviously wasn't in there. But his power is that he has a rocket boost in his umbrella, and then you can glide. But there's no, like, going from one side of the map to the other uncontested. So,
But you spend a lot of time in the air, similar to Gotham Knights.
No. You really the only person that really stays in the air a lot is Deadshot, because you could fly up and then you can shoot a target, and you are constantly falling, but it does appear and feel like you are just floating there, but you are falling down. But that's the only person that really stays in the air like that.
Yeah, gotcha. All the footage when they showed this game off showed everyone freaking flying through the air and jumping and double jumping and spinning a Rooney, and it's just honestly, before everything that the game contained came out, this game had me turned off completely, even as a diehard DC fan, just from what they showed of it. So it's very interesting to hear you say you don't actually spend all your time in the air when all the pre-release footage was just people flying in the air.
Well, taken out of context, it does appear that way. Like I felt that way when I watched the first trailer as well. But it is explained, and I suppose there is a way to constantly stay in the air. Like Deadshot's very easy. You just hold down R1 and he flies. With Harley, you have to find the motion of her moves. Like you have to you stick a grapple hook onto the glider, and you have to swing. So you have to time it. It's not like I just hold a button down and I just go. You have to time it. Same thing with Captain Boomerang. Like you have to aim where he's running to. So the only way to understand what I'm saying is to play the game, and I'm sure you guys are not going to try the game when it eventually comes free on some kind of service, but it is worth a try.
Coming to a free service near you.
To interrupt
with great
you
expedience,
quick.
with great expediency.
Got just announced we have Channel 3 royalty in the chat.
Yo.
Saber did make comments earlier, but I didn't do anything. All the one comment I do remember him saying was it was a good King of the Ring yesterday.
Well,
I disagree, but
I haven't seen it yet. No spoilers, please. I actually haven't had anything spoiled for me yet.
The heel won and the babyface lost. There you go.
Well, I'm always good with that. I'm a heel guy. I'm literally playing 24, and I'm only picking all of the mean things to say.
Back when I was into wrestling, and after Austin had his heel turn, I made a hat called it said, "I'm the bad guy, hate me."
That's right.
All right, let's
get. I thought it was like a Razor Ramon hat.
Yeah, say hello to the bad guy. They started throwing toothpicks at him, and he's like, "Why is everybody throwing toothpicks at me?"
All right, let's get into our topics. First topic coming from GameIndustry.biz and written by Jeffrey. Oh God.
Russo.
Hey, can I real quick interrupt you real fast, Tricky, before you go crazy? And I just want to give a shout out for finally someone coming on here with enough stroke to change the articles from always being IGN. I know that kills you inside, that it's not always Matt Scribbles, the made up name, reading his articles.
We haven't had a Matt Scribbles article in a while.
So as an avid listener of the show, and I've never had to check out anything from IGN in seriously the past 5 years, and I appreciate that.
Can I just say that it's not I'm an IGN lover. It's just I go to IGN because that's one of the biggest sites, and I know that all the news will be in one location. I don't have to check 15 sites for news stories.
I mean, yeah, you could say that, or you could just admit the fact that you love Matt Scribbles.
What's funny is the best place to go first would be the PlayStation blog, but Tricky avoids that like the plague.
Yeah, he does.
Get it directly from the source, and he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, IGN has had a very controversial history with gaming.
Well,
they go through eras.
Well, as I pointed out in the in our text messages, IGN recently bought a bunch of these sites, so essentially this isn't all IGN agenda again.
IGN again, just with.
Listen, IGN has its place, but when I go to read the article that Tricky found and I see it just points back to another article, I go back to the original article.
IGN was like, wow, we see what you did there, Matt.
All right, coming from GameIndustry.biz, PlayStation's London studio has shut down after 20 years. After more than 20 years, Sony Studio responsible for games like The Getaway, Gangs of London, and SingStar Ultimate Party are closing their doors. With working credits on Horizon Forbidden West and projects including iToy and PlayStation VR, the closure comes months after Sony announced it would be laying off 900 staffers of its global workforce. Alex, I'm going to go to you first. What's your thoughts on the London studio closing?
It seems like in recent years they've mostly been focusing on helping, because most of there's other stuff, like I don't know how many SingStars have come out recently, but The Getaway is an older game, so it seems like a lot of their focus, Horizon Forbidden West being one of those big credits, has really just been in aiding other studios. So, I mean, yes, Sony does have studios that help port stuff to PC, and they had a bunch of studios, 8 I believe, help on the development of God of War Ragnarok. But when like the mainline games that you produce are kind of in the past, and we've seen them close other studios, it's kind of not a surprise that this studio's gone away. I mean, even with its history, that does suck. But it's kind of one of those things where you look at what Microsoft's doing, you look at a lot of different places and studios closing, and so if you're not helping the bottom line a ton, like especially at Sony, where you're expected to produce all these AAA first party games that are going to be system sellers, so to speak, you're kind of putting yourself in the crosshairs if you're only kind of aiding the projects.
Looking at London Studios, recent games they made was back in 2012. They made Wonder Book. In 2016, they were on the forefront of PlayStation VR with VR Worlds. And then the latest games they made were for the VR was Blood and Truth and Erica for the 4.
Well, see, that's the problem, is we know Sony doesn't give a damn about VR.
Oh, boy. Going down that road already.
Well, okay, they just closed the London studio, which made some VR games. I can't remember what the other studio was that they closed down, who was also making VR games. Like, Matt
UK.
did. Yeah.
It was UK. So, all right.
Oh, this one?
So okay. This is London. The other one is Sony UK.
Okay.
All right, Matt, your thoughts on London Studio?
I mean, we knew cuts were coming. We knew things were closing down, and as we highlighted in this article, they had The Getaway and Gangs of London. Was it Gangs of London?
Yeah.
Yeah.
PSP,
okay.
Maybe. I
mean, great. See the fact that the article goes, "Oh, they also made SingStar Ultimate." Okay. It unfortunately, they were a highly specialized studio, and it seems like Sony is diversifying to the point where they need to make sure that their studios are able to contribute in a meaningful way to many different games. And working credit on Horizon Forbidden West, great, but I don't know what that entailed. Obviously, they weren't getting any sort of cuts of that, so we knew cuts are coming, we knew cuts are happening, and therefore here we are.
Apparently 2 years ago, they announced that they were working on a cooperative multiplayer game for the 5 set in a modern fantasy London. It was described by the studio head as the company's, quote, most ambitious project to date, end quote.
And there you go. All that ambition got you fired.
All right, Darrell, your thoughts?
It sucks, man, because I'm a huge Getaway fan. Getaway and Getaway Black Monday. Love those games. We were talking about earlier, my PSP. My love for the PSP and my nostalgia. Gangs of London being one of my favorite games on PSP. I can't wait to get it on premium eventually. But it sucks, man. But to be fair, as someone who's currently collecting the PlayStation 3 set, they did a lot of SingStar. They didn't do a ton for a PS4. Erica, from what I understand, I own it, but I haven't played it. From what I understand, it's okay. Blood and Truth is supposed to be pretty decent, but see, I get so motion sick playing VR. Like, I own it. I contributed to buying, but I can't play it. I'm a wimp. So they don't really have anything notable, and it seems like there's a bit of a trend in the industry with these hyper ambitious games, being the thing that taps you out. You're getting so ambitious, maybe you're getting ahead of your skis, and we don't know. But I wasn't surprised. Some of these studios that like Alex said, just hasn't really produced in a while. You know, everyone's cutting back right now, so no one's safe.
Saber in the chat says they need to put the original Astros bot on the PS5. And then, Matt, you responded by saying, having played it, do you think there are elements that would translate well to 2D space? Yeah. Because there wasn't a 2D Astrobot game, too.
We got the pack-in one.
Yeah, so what I mean is when you have a game that's meant strictly for VR, can that translate to the 2D space plane? Because when you're looking at it, take something like Half-Life Alyx, which was made for VR. You have people trying to port it to the 2D plane and some success in that, but it takes away the challenge and the exposure and the immersion of the game. And Astro's Adventure, or whatever was, what would that look like? Because I never played the game. I don't know how that would translate.
But you played the Glorified Tech demo when you got the 5, right?
Playroom, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Has anyone here played the Persistence, that Fire Sprite first-person horror game that they made in VR?
No.
So I bought it, but it was having issues running because it had to go through the Ubisoft launcher at the same time. It was Garbo.
Why does it have to go through the Ubisoft launcher?
On the PC, I bought it on Steam, and it was launching Ubisoft whenever I tried to launch the game.
That's weird. I don't know if maybe Ubisoft published it before Sony gobbled them up, because that's interesting that would be the case. But that's a game that was created for VR, in VR, that was then ported to a 2D space, and it works perfectly. Like, it's really cool. So that's one of my favorite games I've played this year, is the Persistence. But see, I think, too, when you look at Sony's portfolio, if I'm not mistaken, Fire Sprite is over there in merry old England. And when you have these teams over here that are not performing, but then you have this team that you just gobbled up that is performing, I could be wrong about that. I just, for whatever reason, I associate them with a British team.
All right,
Darrell, I do want to say that the Persistence was published released in 2018, so that was before Sony had bought them.
I was right. There was a different game that I bought VR that was on Ubisoft. It wasn't the Persistence.
Yeah, they put it out before Sony gobbled them up, and that's actually why I played their game, is because Sony bought them, and I was looking through. I was like, oh, what do these guys put out? Oh, the Persistence. Oh, wait, they gave us that on Plus. And that's kind of what prompted me to play the game. And it's really good. Really good.
All right.
According to Wikipedia, Fire Sprite themselves published it.
Okay.
Yep, and that's reflected on the Steam page.
Is Fire Sprite the one behind... now I'm drawing blank on the other game. The game in the woods.
Several games going.
What was the game in the woods that Yield really liked? You played like a park ranger...
No, you mean Firewatch?
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what I was talking about. Is that Fire Sprite or no?
No.
Okay. All right.
Wait, was that Hello Games?
No, that was like...
No, Firewatch was made by Campo Santo.
That's it.
Okay, yeah, because what's their names? Hello Games have been stuck on
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky for the longest time, and they're improving that. So
yeah, but now they're coming out with Light No Fire, which is a fantasy type game.
They also put out that little campfire game, whatever it's called, last year, year before.
Yeah. The Last Campfire?
Last Campfire, yeah. Actually, that was back when CJ was on my show, so it's probably been 3 years ago.
Before we move on, I know I saw an article, and it just popped in my head. I wanted to put it into this agenda, but I completely forgot. I don't have all the details because I don't remember the article too well, but apparently there is Sony... laid off a studio, but then basically rehired them to form another studio.
It's the guy that was part of the Black Ops team.
Yeah.
Basically, they gutted it. They got rid of that studio and then took the talent and had them start another one.
Deviation Games. That's the one.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So our next topic, which I thought this would be a nice conversation piece.
Hang on 1 second, Tricky. I did want to say, yes, the reason why I was thinking that Fire Sprite was over there in merry old England is because it is in Liverpool, England. So when you look at the teams that Sony has shuttered, not performing, and then you look at a team that they just purchased that is mega performing. I say mega. That's probably ridiculous. They got a few different games in the pipe right now, and they put out some good stuff. So I think that right there might have something to do with, our SingStar team. RIP.
I don't know what's going on with Saber, but in the last couple of weeks he's been highly censored in our chat. He says
because he doesn't use proper punctuation, so it's always popping up websites when he's using talk to text and when he's texting like a madman.
Yeah, but now he's like words are censored, and I think it's because he watches it and is doing talk to text, which is mistaking certain words for others.
Right. Also, it's probably because he pre-ordered Assassin's Creed Shadow.
It says hello and then censored word to go back to making Joe Danger. And then another censored word, we're awesome.
Hello games. He wants hello games. It probably thought he said hello gays. If he was using talk to text, probably bleep that part out.
And he said,
the way it is, it's not making that kind of sense.
He does that with us. And we have a messenger group, Matt and I and Saber. And he'll talk to text, and it'll bleep him out in talk to text all the time. And it's like, slow down.
What's fun?
He says that is correct.
Where we get to insert our own words into his conversation.
We get to do Mad Libs.
Basically, I think he wants the Joe Danger games to be re-released.
Yeah, or does he want Joe Danger 3? Because they did Joe Danger and Joe Danger 2. Joe Danger 3 could be really good.
He's addressing our homosexual audience. So he's saying, hello, gays. We should play Joe Danger.
All right, moving on. Coming from IGN, written by Ryan Dinsdale. PlayStation exec says AI is important to Gen Z and Gen Alpha gamers who want, quote, personalization across everything, end quote. Head of PlayStation Productions, Asid Quillibash, weighed in on the topic of AI use in video game development. Quote, advancements in AI will create a more personalized experiences and more meaningful stories for consumers.
What?
For instance, non-player characters in games could interact with players based on their actions, making it feel more personal, end quote.
Oh my God.
He believes Gen Z and Gen Alpha want more personalization across everything as they grow up in the digital age and believes AI can help achieve that. No, Alex, you were commented as I was reading it. I'll let you go first.
You know what I think adds personalization to a game? Actual people making shit for a game, making music, voicing a character, doing mocap for a character, not a computer-generated bullshit. Like, I would think it would be less personable to have AI doing shit. And people actually having a job in the industry and doing these things and making games. Personally, I think that is the route people want to go. I don't think people want more AI.
All right, hold on. I took this as he's talking about AI controlling the NPCs, not AI making the games.
It's creating stuff. What they're doing, guys, is everyone is out there in these different companies, and they're all like, hey, we can use AI for this. We can use AI for this. We can use AI to cut corners and help with production. What they're doing is they're softening the blow for when inevitably they have nearly completely AI generated games. So this is all PR speak. Get out there, say it now. I went to a BNI meeting not too long ago.
What's a BNI meeting?
It's a business networking. I don't know what the I stands for. Intersectionality, maybe? I don't know. Either way, it's a bunch of small business owners getting together, and it's a pay-to-play referral system where we all own small businesses, and we're a part of this group. We pay lots of money. We don't know what happens to it, but we're required to get our stripes on our report card to use each other in referrals. So what they do is they make you get together once a month, once a week, and have these people come in and have these talks. This lady came in, and she was talking about how she uses AI in her photography business, her marketing, social media, and photography business. And just trying to do it was like a 2-hour presentation on letting AI do the work for you so that you can put the final touches at the end to say, this was created by a person. And I sat there and listened to it, and I was like, I mean, there's definitely some cool things AI can do with marketing and email blasts and stuff like that. But like when I took that and then heard the next person in video games in a creative field talking about how they're going to use AI to create the stuff that you're looking at. And it's like, there's going to come a day where you're not going to be able to tell what's what. and you're going to have less actual people in there being creative, and these big companies with these big annualized franchises are going to just pump out AI generated garbage content, and it's going to suck real bad before we ever get anything cool out of it.
All right, Matt, you were kind of shaking your head up and down when Darrell started talking.
Yeah, I agree. Is that all of this is just incremental frog in the boiling pot steps? It's let's do something. Let's put it in a consumer favorable light to be able to implement it what we want down the line. I mean, here's what I think about when I hear saying gamers want personalization. I want the ability for me to type my name, whatever name I want, in and have that be like a spoken word. I think AI could help with that. But absolutely look at what that slippery slope gets us to, is that people are going to start saying, well, you like this, now we can make it do the music, which will be more important. And then we can make it create ambiance by having NPCs react to you different ways. And then what they're failing to tell you is that AI created those NPCs, that there was no artistic movement in that. It's AI is the new procedural generation.
Yep.
Because that's what procedural generation is, just using a set of rules to create something. And that's what people are going to do with AI. And it's going to hurt jobs. It's going to hurt creative direction in a lot of these games. And the way that this is doing is this is them testing the water, saying, hey, you know, we think this will be good. This is what you want to hear. I have literally heard nobody from Gen Z or Gen Alpha be like, oh yeah, I want AI in my games, so that way it's more personalized. I've never heard that. And
not a real sentence.
It sounds like this is something AI wrote.
Well, and here's the thing, like this is a cost savings measure. You have fewer people, you rely more on AI, saves you money. They're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, you know, we use this to create intro music. Well, that saved us this much money. What if we used it to create a conversation? Saved us this much money. What if we use this to create an entire soundtrack? Saved us even more money. And it's just going to keep rolling as a way for them to save money and hire less people.
And what they really mean is that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are too stupid to notice, because they're on YouTube watching Skibidi Toilet humor, and one day they're going to put out their procedurally generated AI-controlled looter shooter live service garbage, and they're just going to get in there and play Fortnite, give them lots of money for skins, and that's going to be the new wave of business. You guys ever seen Robin Hood Men in Tights from back in the day?
Yep. So
you know how Prince John, he's like, Sheriff of Rottingham comes in. I got some really bad news. He goes, whoa, bad news? So I've had a good morning. He said, I got up, had a good breakfast, had a good BM. He's like, what if you gave me the bad news, but in a good way, so it doesn't sound so bad? And then Sheriff of Rottingham starts laughing. He's like, oh, Robin Hood beat the crap out of me and my men. And he just goes this whole thing. He's laughing. He's like, why are you laughing? That's terrible news. Like, that's what they're doing to us right now. They're like laughing like, we're going to have AI come in and we're going to completely replace your favorite artist. This is going to be great for you.
Every time automation is introduced to whatever industry, it's as a cost-saving efficiency measure, whether it is self-service kiosks, self-checkouts, and you're actually starting to see a bit of a turn against that. You're seeing the Walmarts and the Targets and the Costcos being like, oh, maybe self-checkout isn't what we want it to be. And there's actually states now, because of the public feedback, putting laws in place saying, if you have self-checkout, you are legally obligated to have this many cashiers or this many additional checkout lanes open. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you have corporations start to make business decisions that are replacing people's jobs. Now you get the government coming in here making laws, and as everybody knows, once you start having more and more laws and regulations put in, companies start figuring out their ways around that, and it's creating this one-upmanship that's creating a problem. And AI is going to be that new area, and you already have the government talking about it. I research this weekly about what the government is doing to catch up to AI, and unfortunately, it's just not fast enough. AI is rocketing off that fast that people are looking for ways to leverage it. And I guarantee there is going to be a cybersecurity incident that is going to change the entire makeover of what AI is doing. So these companies who think they're going to count on AI are going to be extremely limited on what they can do. And it's going to cost them even more to implement it.
The thing that's also frustrating too is like big businesses have these huge tax incentives to come to your towns to provide jobs, right? So like it's always this big tug of war because it's like big businesses get all these tax breaks and they get all this stuff. We should tax them more, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, wait, that sounds good, except for the fact the reason why they're in your town in the first place and your jobs are even available to you is because of the tax breaks your town provided for them to come there. So the thing that breaks that whole cycle is it's like, oh, we'll come to your town, you give us the tax breaks, and then we'll replace all the jobs with self-checkout. Like, it's super frustrating. I went to a Walmart the other day, and I was there game hunting because they were doing their big Walmart clearance thing. There was like 40 or 50, I kid you not, 40 or 50 self-checkout aisles, and there was less than a dozen actual traditional aisles on either end, and they were all closed. The only thing open was self-checkout, and they had 3 employees manning the whole thing.
Here's where it goes. It's beneficial. When I go food shopping every week, I walk into the store, I have my scanner, I pick up my item, I scan it, and I go right up to self-checkout, scan my barcode, and I'm out in less than 10 minutes. I appreciate that use of the system. But having self-checkout where I now have to just take all of my stuff and scan it myself at the self-checkout, and now it's got the weight system, it's got the scanner system, it's got all these other systems. You got
cameras
one employee
hooked up to it.
Rolling.
You go too fast, it flags it.
Yep. And having done loss prevention, I was responsible for watching all of this shit get put in. And I know the headache it can cause a store when stuff doesn't work. I can tell you the amount of times we had to intervene in a Lowe's self-checkout because nobody was doing anything nefarious. It was just the system wasn't working. The plate glass was all scuffed and you couldn't scan things. But now when I go into Costco at the end of the pandemic, they started locking that down like it was their Fort Knox. Like, you had to show your card to be able to show that it's really you. You're not giving your card to your brother and sister.
Correct.
Then you have to scan your card at self-checkout like they scan it at the regular lanes. Then I had to have somebody check my receipt at self-checkout to make sure everything I scanned was legitimate, on top of having to have my receipt checked when I go to the exit. It was just all these other things that was making self-checkout not convenient. But there's time efficiencies there that can be built in, but when it's not implemented right, just like AI, if it's not implemented right, it's going to create even worse. And we've already seen that in games. I can't think of the recent examples, but again, this just goes back to procedural generation and what No Man's Sky did. And said, we've got 18 quintillion planets. Okay, great. They all look like dog shit.
Yep. Well, think about this, right? When you go to authenticate your game on the network of any platform anymore, like if you don't have a steady internet connection or your internet's down for the moment, or God forbid you travel and want to play a video game, it's like all of a sudden the entire ecosystem is broken. You can no longer access your stuff. And it's so frustrating because what I see is the more and more AI generated crap is more and more stuff to break with no one behind it to fix it. It's just like, oh, here we go. Although, looking at things on a positive note, we could get some really cool Assassin's Creed Unity style bugs and breaks in our games that might be actually pretty awesome.
All right, moving on to our next story. Coming from PC Games N. Matt wanted to point out that is not a spelling error. I knew it wasn't, Matt. Written by Will Nelson. I wonder if he's related to...
Is that Willie Nelson?
Willie. Beloved Helldivers 2 CEO is stepped down to focus on making the game. Johan...
That's a bit of a strong state. That's a bit of a strong statement. Beloved? Is he really?
He's seen in a positive light in the community.
I mean, but I think that, like, really, when it, like, this studio really, yeah, we know that they've done stuff before this, but the studio really caught fire with Helldivers 2. Has there really been enough time for everyone to be like, oh my God, Johan?
He's been open, he's been honest, he's been communicative, even sometimes if he misspoke, and people appreciate that.
Isn't he funny on Twitter too?
I don't know if he's been funny. I know he's during this whole fiasco, there's been times that he's made jokes and things like that. So he's also personable.
Right. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like they're like, oh, there's no such thing as automaton robots or whatever. There's clearly nothing happening, but there's actually stuff happening in the game. So it's almost like he's in on the joke.
Yeah, but see, my thing is, when I think beloved, I think Shigeru Miyamoto or Tim Schafer. This guy maybe well liked and appreciated, but I'm just saying beloved is a strong word. We can go on.
I think
Isn't Tim Schafer an Xbox guy now?
He's Double Fine, yeah.
Yes.
I think that love's long gone, brother.
Oh, come on now.
He's painting the town green. Hey, he's gonna be gone soon. I'm calling it.
Well, if you've, I mean, I'm sure you've listened to some of our latest shows, and I say that I'm really worried about Double Fine. As a critically acclaimed studio, but not necessarily a commercially successful studio, I'm very concerned. But yeah, Tricky, continue.
Thank you. Johan Pilestedt, the vocal former CEO of Arrowhead Games, is stepping down. Moving forward, he will be the studio's chief creative officer as he wants to focus more on development of the game than running the studio. But Arrowhead Games is in good hands, personally picked by Phil said. Shams Yorhani will be the studio's new CEO. A former Paradox Interactive chief business development officer, Arrowhead will continue development and improve the fight for freedom and democracy.
You leave my Heine out of this.
Oh my gosh, dude! I was thinking someone should have went on that document and changed it for your Yohani to your Heine, and he would have read it straight face.
No, I would have questioned it.
Your Heine.
So we'll start with you, Matt. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we kind of saw this coming. You saw the passion in Pilsted's tweets and discussions around the game and making it work. And I think in the conversation we had in our group, Alex, you've said Jorhani has done good work before. My Heine. So, you know, I think it's a good pick. We'll see what happens. And again, with Pilstead now having more direct involvement as opposed to now making the business run, I think it's no secret the game has had some troubles on balancing, and some people, whether they're vocal minority or not, making notes about you're making guns worse, you're making things worse, you know, really need to focus down. So I think this is a good move for the organization.
All right. Darrell?
I got a question. You guys all enjoy Helldivers, correct?
I don't.
I was going to say, yes, Matt and I do.
Okay,
yes.
But you still play it though.
I dabble, yes.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that later. I just was curious. So I think it's cool. I think as someone who has spent a lot of years in management, you find, now granted, nothing I've ever done is comparable to being in, you know, like a cool video game studio, but there's a lot of the magic of what you do lost when you're managing people to make the thing happen. In my line of work, a lot of that was just production, just making cool equipment, making cool things, designing cool things. So for me, I spent my last few years in that field in management, and it's not as rewarding, not as fun, you know. Even at one of the mortgage companies I worked at, you know, spent a lot of time helping people figure out their files, not necessarily working on your own. There's something great about being in management over people and making a studio, making your business run, but there's also something, you know, lacking when you're not actually doing something creative or doing something that stretches those muscles and got you there in the first place. So I could totally see it. I'm actually surprised we don't see that more often in this particular line of work, you know, like there's not that many guys who go, hey, I'm running my studio, but actually I kind of just want to make more games. So what we usually see, I guess, is they leave the studio, start another one where they're creating video games again on a smaller scale.
Well, even take over the whole PSN account fiasco. The thing he said, and he tweeted multiple times, is like, I just want to make a good game. Our hands are tied. We're just trying to make a good game for you. You could tell his right. Passion about it was in the right place, and that's why I think that prompted this move.
Yeah, but do you think him making those comments, because in some way I do feel like he was saying that as damage control rather than that's how he actually felt. I feel like he was.
It was genuine.
I always felt like he was trying to shift the blame so nobody was coming after him about it.
It was not his. I mean, so he came out there and he said, I knew about this requirement. It was given to us 6 months. We failed at communication. Again, that being open, honest, and communicative, which is great. But ultimately, it was still Sony's call. Arrowhead was like, we have no say in this. Like, this was the requirement put on us by Sony. It's just the communication, the clarity around it failed horribly around launch as associated with the launch issues. So that's why I believe he's genuine when he talks about this, because he's been open, honest, and communicative.
All right, Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, and if he's going to try to shift blame when there's not blame to shift, Sony's going to come right back out and be like, what are you doing? Like, they could easily have ties cut with Sony if it's found out that he's trying to publicly throw them under the bus for a decision he was also part of. So I think he was being honest about that situation. You got to also wonder, in the proximity to controversy, if that controversy didn't play a role in this decision. Like, if he wants to, CEO, you can do a lot. You have a lot of power. But maybe him wanting to feel closer to the game kind of, hopefully, in his eyes, might prevent, future snafus or controversies like that. So I wonder if that played any kind of role in his decision. But, also, like Darrell said, sometimes people just want to create. They don't have to worry about all the bureaucratic crap. And, it's perfectly reasonable for him to feel that way and kind of want to step back and do more of the creative process or be a bigger part of that. But I also, the conspiracy theorist in me also wants to think that, maybe, just maybe, the controversies kind of made him look deeper and kind of be like, I want to be closer to our games and not quite so far away.
Or Sony said, we're getting ready to write that check and acquire you guys, but Homeboy's got to step down back for maybe misspeaking a little bit.
All right. Just transition real quick. Not trying to kill the conversation, but we do have some more other Helldivers news coming from IGN. Written by...
Oh, God, another
There
one.
we go. All three of us snapped at the same time.
Talk about people writing checks. IGN's writing out their check.
Written by Wesley Yinpool. Helldivers 2 dev says it's seen a, quote, horrifying, end quote, amount of threats and rude behavior from some in the community. Taking the quote from GameIndustry.biz interview, this article discusses one quote with former Arrowhead CEO Pilestedt. Quote, the difference now, which is horrifying, is the amount of threats and rude behavior that people in the studio are getting from some really shitty individuals within the community, end quote. And he also went on to say that's something else we have to deal with. Essentially, what he's saying is due to the success of Helldivers, over 12 million copies sold. I know you put that in there just to brag there, Matt. You're going to have some toxic players and still learning their way around handling that. Don't put your hands up.
What? Is that not accurate fact?
It isn't accurate fact, but that was not needed for that particular section.
Well, no, it actually was, and I'm good. If I can jump in, I will go into exactly what this is.
Go ahead.
Because first and foremost, this was an IGN article taken from a longer Game Industry Biz interview with Pilestedt, and it boiled down one part of the conversation to make a larger article, to make a clickbait that they knew Tricky would click on. So the basis of the article was just, how did Arrowhead Games come to be? What about your past game successes? Where does that lead you now? So it was actually, the Game Industry Biz was a really interesting read. But for the purpose of this conversation we're having, we're going to stick with what the IGN article focused on. And what they're saying is, because they haven't had this kind of success in any other games. Listen, Magicka 2, and Helldivers 1 had good success, enough for them to continue operating as a studio to make Helldivers 2. But the fact that this game has been so successful, 12 million copies sold, something that they've never thought they'd do, unfortunately, that brings in a portion of the gaming community that is extremely toxic, and they are now having to deal with all of that. So that's what I was trying to get at by pointing that out, to say that they have so many sales that they're dealing with that now. They really haven't had to deal with this issue before. Sure, there's been toxicity, but not to the level of what they're seeing now, and that's what's new to them.
And they probably get some of that too from all the controversy with the whole PSN link too.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback off that and say that with 12 million copies sold, thank you, Jimmy, for greenlighting this game under your watch.
Oh boy, Alex.
I'll give him credit for that because this game's been in development for a while and published by Sony. So there you go. One positive Jimmy Ryan quote.
Yeah, one successful live service game out of 12.
Just for
trying to push.
Just for everybody that's listening and whatnot, we're gonna get into the whole Jimmy Ryan conversation later. So that's just
you had to spoil it, Tricky.
Well,
wow, is that what I'm here for?
They kind of knew that was coming too for the comments in the Facebook group. So, Darrell's just trying to needle his way in because he knows he's fighting a 1v3 battle later.
It's not a needle anything, and I'm not here to change anyone's opinions, okay? But I do like to point out from some of the most outlandish and nefarious comments made on the show in the previous weeks that everyone hates the idea of live service until they get the Helldivers.
Okay, all right.
Sometimes you got to crack a few eggs.
We're sticking
a dozen.
We're sticking a pin in you, Darrell. Alex, your thoughts on the toxicity?
Well, welcome to the internet. Unfortunately, it is unavoidable when you have that many people interacting with each other. It's just kind of, I mean, my experience with the Helldivers has been generally very positive. I don't think there's ever been anybody that's, been shitty to me or anything like that. I haven't been killed by any of my teammates on purpose. Haven't got any rude messages. Haven't had to block anybody from Helldivers. So, I haven't seen any issues there. And obviously, Mr. Pilestedt and the rest of the team, they would see that. And I think the article said that they are getting threats or they're having people be rude to them. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. I had something that I lost, but yeah, I mean, they talked about how they didn't want to add PvP because that only incites toxicity. People's competitive spirit comes out, and you look at other competitive games and like that can just fan the flames. That could just pour gasoline on everything. So they didn't want to do PvP because of that. So it's all just going to be PvE. But even that doesn't stop people from being just completely out of hand. So, I mean, again, 12 million copies sold, people on the internet, anonymity, just being dicks. I mean, I haven't experienced it, but I mean, I completely believe with a community that big that you're going to get some people acting just really shitty.
All right. Moving on to our last topic before our topic of the week.
Don't you have thoughts?
I do not. Because
you did share his thoughts, Matt. He read IGN's article.
I mean, I have thoughts, but you guys have all covered it, so I don't want to just.
What if Wesley Yenpool was Tricky's pen name? Like that's his alias.
Coming from Games Radar.
It used to be Matt Scribble.
Oh, he wants to throw us off the trail now that he's been found out. He wants to change the subject.
And written by Khan Saren, Ghost of Tsushima becomes PlayStation's biggest single-player launch on PC, beating God of War and Marvel Spider-Man. While Helldivers 2 remains Sony's biggest hit on PC, when it comes to single-player games, the newly launched Ghost of Tsushima PC leads the pack of Sony property taking over the platform. The game has reached a concurrent player count of 75,000 during its launch period, where God of War was at 73,000 and 2018 Spider-Man was at a 66,000 peak. All right, so...
Well, I mean, Ghost of Tsushima is better than both those games, so...
It's almost like they keep setting records with these franchises.
Just saying,
I would say God of War is better than Ghost of Tsushima.
Sony, you're welcome that the PC players are saving your butts.
No, you guys are welcome that Jimmy Ryan allowed you to play real games.
And I would argue and say God of War.
Jimmy, and we haven't even really opened.
Hold on. To be fair, Hiroki Totoki is the one who wants to get more of these games on PC. So really, Jimmy Ryan was holding them back.
Hiroki Totoki Literature Club coming in after they're already successful, setting record after record. He doesn't get to claim this past success. This was already in the pipe.
No, what I'm saying, Jim Ryan was holding them back, and Hiroki's like, we'll open the floodgates, so they're going to make more money.
Jimmy Ryan is
PC
the
games.
Superman holding the dam together from breaking. He's the Spider-Man holding the trains together.
I could let
all this greatness flow on top of it one
y'all.
time.
Let's tap this for later. This is all going to be.
Let it happen slowly. Enjoy it.
And
Savor the moment.
Alex, I would say God of War is better than Ghost of Tsushima.
Was the Last of Us Part 1, is that plug-in, PC port, is that plugging any holes in that dam? It's actually probably chipping away, making some holes bigger.
Hey, They put that piece of garbage out, and then what they have? Layoffs and a game cancellation. Jimmy Ryan don't F around.
Did you just call The Last of Us garbage?
Let me back up and see what we're talking about. We're talking about the broken, ugly PC port that the Naughty Dog thought they were great enough to handle.
I was about to kick you from this call and just finish the show.
I will say this: that Jimmy Ryan don't mess around, and we saw even with the Golden Child Naughty Dog that you mess up, you get on the list.
All right, Alex, get back to your comments.
What am I? Oh, yeah. Ghost of Tsushima is a masterpiece. I disagree with Tricky. I mean, God of War is a great game. God of War Ragnarok is a great game. Ghost of Tsushima is better. Ghost of Tsushima is a studio-defining game. And look, I think it's not only just like the gameplay, but the visuals. Like just how well they made that game. I don't know. It's no surprise to me that this game is seen as much success as it has. But as Sony, Sony is going to see more and more success on the PC. They just got to have more and more games on there. Yeah, I mean, no surprise. Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic game. So no doubt there was going to be interest in it.
Matt, your thoughts?
I agree with Alex. I played the 2018 God of War. I was okay. I was lukewarm on it. Ghost of Tsushima kept my attention long enough to the point where I bought the $30 director's cut on PS5 because I wanted all that goodness. And, I started going back to play it on New Game Plus because I didn't want to spend money a second time for a game as I've been wont to do in the past. And, I think it deserves the success, especially since it's been a pretty good port. Early development into PlayStation games ported over to PC have been plagued with hardware issues, with problems and crashes and bugs. This one seems to be pretty stable. There are some crashing that players are experiencing, but Sucker Punch came out and said they were very proud of the work Nixes did in transferring this over.
All right. At this time,
Whoa! I don't get a shot. I don't get a shot.
Oh, I'm sorry, Darrell. I figured you were sorry, but I didn't want to give you more of a platform for your Jimmy Ryan propaganda.
Oh, come on now! All the shenanigans are done. I will say that Ghost of Tsushima is a masterpiece. Such a great game, and I think that I love. That's right, it is a masterpiece. I think I like it better than The Last of Us. Actually, I don't know if that's true or not, but I will say I love PlayStation's strategy, and this one was a Sean Layden joint, so you give him his flowers. Having a game come out, do its business, make PlayStation great, make it the reason why you want to go there and play, and then double dipping, coming back later on down the road and putting these games out on PC and letting players, they're never going to come over. I mean, like, they're PC players, like their PC, they like doing their taxes and playing video games on screens beside each other. And I think giving them the option to play real games instead of having to, buy hentai games on Steam or, streaming their Game Pass to their PC, I think it's great for them personally.
All right. At this time, we are going to throw it to the community.
Time to check my social media, yeah.
I gotta say, I have such pride in playing that every week just to annoy the hell out of Joe Priestley.
And it does. He still reacts to it.
He wasn't in the chat tonight, so you obviously chased him off by playing it twice last week.
Oh, maybe we should play it twice for when he listens to it on the podcast services. I should have just played it. All right, first question comes from...
All you're doing is throwing fuel on the fire between you and Joe.
Because
Joe deserves it.
Time to...
Okay. Will wants to know, are y'all excited about the Stellar Boy update restoring the Horny Boy costumes to the original state? Yield, because he was not on the show, did leave comments in some of these questions. So Yield responded by saying, there's no reason why a video game company cannot, quote, make games for adults, end quote. If you remember when GTA 3 was released and the early backlash was coming for it, Rockstar made the comment that they didn't make GTA for little Timmy, instead we made it for little Timmy's dad. So I have no problem when a video game company critiques their game towards one audience or the other. We have games geared towards kids, and we have games geared towards adults. I know this is a hot topic right now in our community, so let's try to keep it respectful. Matt, we'll start with you.
So here's my issue. Seeing the edits that they made to the costumes, I'm not entirely sure what they achieved by the pre-launch changes, because there were much more revealing, skimpier outfits in the game. And I'm not entirely sure what those changes were. So now they're reverting back to those pre-patch changes. Again, I'm not sure what they're achieving by this. Again, evidently it was due to some outcry by as
The
Will
Horny
from the
Boys
PlayStation Ain't Dead podcast like to say, the Horny Boys. And in another thread I commented, I'm surprised they took their hands off something else to long enough to type out their responses to
off the joystick.
Change. Off their joysticks. I don't know what this achieves. I don't know what the purpose of it. It's, from what I hear, a decent game. And if it weren't if the female lead wasn't the way she was, would this be as good of a game?
I played the demo. I thought the chick that dies at the beginning was much hotter.
Thanks for that contribution, Tricky.
I honestly, with these costumes, I really don't see, like, the costumes that were cut. They don't seem that much more revealing to me.
They didn't cut them. They literally added some fabric
to
cover it up. But there are other costumes in the game,
Matt, and I'm gonna need you to stop making excuses for it.
Darrell, your thoughts?
Darrell, look at your stalker.
I was gonna say Darrell's got. I was gonna throw it to Darrell, but Darrell had somebody peeking through the window. Alex, we'll go to you first or a second for your comments on the censorship.
Yeah, I mean, like Yield said, I agree that there's no problem with making games for adults because not all games are intended for children. In this instance, I've never played a game for sexual gratification, so I don't care how skimpy the outfits are or what she's wearing. I just care that the game is fun. There's a good story, So I could care less about these changes, but for anyone who does care about this kind of thing, hey, glad that maybe they're reverting this so you can get more joy out of playing the game, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why I went to Alex with this because Alex is under the impression that Jessica Rabbit's not hot. So
Jessica Rabbit's a cartoon, so I said what I said.
That doesn't mean she can't be hot.
You know what, Tricky? If you want to go to Toontown for your dates, you go ahead.
Darrell, is Jessica Rabbit hot?
A young resident Darrell once thought so. Yes.
Okay.
A reformed resident Darrell.
The
cartoons are
the married Christian Darrell.
Look, dude. Nowadays, people are basing their entire identity off of cartoons, so I just can't get down with it anymore.
All right. So
when it was just.
What's your thoughts on the censorship?
Easier. So I'm of two minds. Okay, part of me wants to really make a bunch of jokes. The other part of me wants to be a little bit serious. So I'm going to throw one of the jokes out there of the many I've prepared, but I'm going to stop. Alex said that he has never played a game for sexual gratification. I wanted to be like, have you ever really played a game then? But I left it alone. I tried to compose myself and I interrupted him just to make a stupid joke. As far as the censorship stuff goes, this update exists because something was changed early on. I know Matt has been team This Isn't Censorship. They just added fabric. Matt has been in our DMs. He's been on our Facebook group defending this idea that there hasn't been no change. But I honestly believe this update exists because this team came out and said, "Hey, Horny Boys, we are making a game and it is uncensored across the board." And then, earlier we got 2 wins for Jimmy. Jimmy's gonna take the L on this one because he has been at the helm of PlayStation during their censorship era. So he's the Vince McMahon of the PG.
I was just about to make that joke.
Yes, essentially that's what it is. And as much as I think that PG kind of actually appeals to me more nowadays than non-PG. I never want an artist to be censored because that's just a slippery slope with everything. It's with freedom of speech, with, creating art, and whether it be writing, whether it be podcasting, whether it's video game development, whatever. Like, I may not agree or like what you're doing, but like the same freedom that protects me and allows me to express myself, talk about how great I think Jimmy Ryan is the same freedom that allows someone to go out and make a Horny Boy game. So as much as I don't want to play as naked characters on Stellar Blade, no one has to work tomorrow. We're good. We're going all night, baby.
I was typed that.
No, just kidding. No, as much as I don't want to play as a Horny Boy gamer, or Horny Boy experience, I'm glad they exist for those that want them. But I do agree that I do believe that had this thing would have been allowed to be released with the quote uncensored version originally, without them having to patch extra fabric on there, then they would not come out with this as a small victory for the Horny Boys.
I think they censored it and begin to create the controversy so more people will talk about their game, so they can come out and go, we saved it by giving you guys back what you wanted.
I don't disagree with you. I think PR firms and I think they're smart enough to catch on that stuff now. And part of me thinks that a lot of what we experience today is exactly that. Like Assassin's Creed.
The more you talk about it,
stuff is just manufactured, and it's just, let's get them talking about it.
What's that old adage? Bad
controversy creates cash.
All publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I was getting at, Darrell, is to the point, like, I go out there and I've been defending that this is not censorship. I'm saying this is censorship in the most pandering form ever. And the game is pandering to a group of people. And the changes they made ultimately achieved nothing, because if they were trying to do something that qualified as we're going to censor ourselves to get that certain group to buy our game, they changed 2 costumes compared to all of the other costumes in the game that are way more revealing and way more sexy for the character. So it's like they said, oh, look, here's what we did. We did this to appease you guys. But then there's all these other things that are out there that it's like you miss. Doing this ultimately was a token action. The real censorship was the removal of the N-word graffiti, which I really don't hear a lot of people arguing for.
Was it actually the N-word? Because I thought the phrase was hard R. I don't think it was the actual N-word, because the graphic I saw was a graffiti that said hard R, like H-A-R-D-R.
Then that must be what it is. I misread the articles then saying that. But so to that point, it's censorship. But again, I don't hear a lot of people arguing for that to come back into the game.
Right. Which, and again, even that right there, which I've heard some. I try to listen to a lot of opinions that don't necessarily line up with mine, just to get a more rounded scope on things. And from what I understand, the phrase hard R is like a YouTube thing. And
yeah, it is.
So it's kind of, from what I'm understanding, it's kind of like you got to be in the know to even get that. And the fact that it got taken out, again, really leads me to believe what Tricky said is like, these PR firms are like, let's put some stuff in there. Let's take it out. Let's give it back. Sell your game. Horny Boys are going to go freaking nuts.
All right.
The crew that hates pandering, if you pander to them in the way that they like, they're going to freaking throw their money at you. And I really like I believe a lot of weird stuff like that. Like, that there's actually ulterior motives to it all.
All right. Moving on to our next question, also from Will. It is rumored that Microsoft is ready to acquire Steam for $16 billion. Would it be? Do you think this is good? Do you think this is bad? Again, Yield has left a comment saying, I think it's bad. Microsoft, Sony haven't shown good stewardship towards the industry by buying up all these studios and, number one, producing hardly anything. Number two, laying off hundreds of people, not just from the studios that you purchased, but from studios they've owned for years. In my opinion, they should start repairing they should start reaping the benefits of the studios they already own before spending more money they obviously can't afford on other studios / companies. Darrell, we'll go to you first.
So I don't often agree with much that Yield says, but I kind of agree with what he's getting at to a point. I do agree that I think both companies have been kind of poor stewards of what they have. I think from a production management standpoint, if people pitch crap to you, like sometimes you're just a one-hit wonder. Sometimes your studio's just they're good for one or two and then they burn out. The people that made it special leave. The people that are left behind that grow up, move up, whatever, they're just not good. So I do think that there's some studios are just, they're finite in what they can produce. But Microsoft specifically, I think, has been a poor steward of producing quality. But I agree with him on that. But I think purchasing a storefront, first off, $16 billion seems kind of small. It seems to me like that's just not enough, especially when everything in this world right now is hyperinflated, from our apples and bananas all the way to Activision, Blizzard King. Like, everything is hyperinflated. So $16 billion seems to be too small for me, but whatever. I think that if they were to purchase a storefront like that or a platform like that, I think that would be the final, you can't consume anything else of any real value. You didn't do a great job of your Microsoft store. Like, no one ever bought onto that. No one ever, because for a while there was a couple games that came to it.
All right, Darrell, I want to cut you off for 1 second real quick. His comment did say buy Steam, but in reality, they're looking to buy Valve as well. So it's not just the storefront; it's Valve in its entirety.
No one, what would you say today? What does everyone talk about? They don't talk about games that Valve makes. They talk about Steam as
Valve is not making. I don't think Valve
is
really
Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think Valve is really in the game development business right now. Yes, they do make games, but I think they really rely on Steam as their moneymaker.
Well,
I could be wrong, and I'm not in the PC market, and Matt's got his finger up to correct me. So, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's heavy rumors that they're now coming out with another PvP hero-based shooter that has a code name. I don't remember the code name, but they still work on games, just depending on what. I mean, they obviously still run their Dota leagues, as well as, like Darrell said, it's been a couple of years, Half-Life Alyx, but that's kind of Valve's thing, where they come out with a game every half decade or so, or something out there. They don't pump out a lot, but what they do pump out is quality.
And they don't have to. See, that was the thing about Steam. It afforded them the opportunity to say, we'll make a game if we feel like we've got something to make. But, there's been articles and conversations for years over Half-Life 3. Half-Life 3. Will Half-Life 3 ever happen? It's like, Half-Life 3 will happen if they come up with something that they feel like would work. But I don't see this happening, to answer the question. I don't see Xbox of all platforms being a good steward of it. But if anyone was going to buy it, I mean, they got the eye of Sauron on them now. Like, they have to do something or Xbox is gone. So, I don't know. Maybe that's still in the pipeline to gobble up something like that.
Alex, your thoughts?
I was looking I saw an article earlier where it basically refuted this and said, not that Microsoft didn't want to buy Valve, but also that Valve didn't want to be bought.
Right.
I'll try to find that article here, but one, I don't think this will happen. Because I don't think Valve wants to sell to Microsoft. I would think they want to control their store. I mean, they've been massively successful. No one can even touch them in that space.
Right.
So I think they want to keep in control of that. But also, you just look at what Microsoft has done. Multiple rounds of layoffs. More layoffs are reportedly to come. And they want to spend, $16 billion more on Valve. The carnage that would come from that would be, even worse. So, I don't think Microsoft needs to buy him, because that's only going to mean bad things for the people who work at Microsoft. I guess it would be good for Microsoft to own Steam and own Valve, but then again, I don't think that, like Darrell said, they'd be good stewards. I think they're going to lay off even more people, because they were blaming the Activision Blizzard purchase on a lot of their layoffs recently. So this just doesn't need to happen. Microsoft doesn't need to gobble up anybody else until they can figure out, get their first party studios straight. Because they just released Hellblade 2, but they still have a lot of work to do when it comes to what their strategy actually is.
And there's rumors that Hellblade's actually going to come to the PS5 as well. So, all right, Matt, any more thoughts on this?
Again, I stress this is a rumor. And outside of Gabe Newell getting a fat retirement check, I'm not seeing the upside for Valve in this case. Again, as Darrell pointed out, they get to create games on their own schedule. Their business model of being the premier storefront on the PC, you've got Epic, you've got Origin, you've got Ubisoft, and still everybody comes back to Valve. Every month they post higher and higher concurrent users, showing that they're the ones to go to. It's no secret. Microsoft and Phil Spencer have come out in the past and said, "Oh yeah, we've talked about what would be the benefit or what would look like buying Nintendo or EA or Valve." I just don't see any upside into it, and the fact that it's a rumor, I just think somebody may have taken something said in passing, and now they're kind of going with that. I think it would be bad. I agree with everybody. Valve has operated on their own auspices since before the PC market blew up, and they have been doing improvement over improvement, revenue over revenue, generating content, generating service, generating value on the PC. PC gaming is as big as it is because of Valve, not because of any other system or publisher. Valve did it. They have no reason to stop.
I'm sure that conversation has happened where people at Microsoft have been like, well, you look at it like you're talking about concurrent users and a user base. Like, I'm sure they're like, well, if we look at that's the biggest thing on the market, if we have that literally prints money for years and years and years to come. So I'm sure they've had those conversations, but just like in those emails that came out during the ABK lawsuits and stuff, when you're talking about that thing with Nintendo, like, sure, they were talking about buying Nintendo. Doesn't mean they'll get it, and it's possible.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm sure there's been many conversations in this world for companies and entities that like never came to fruition, but someone mentioned it at least once.
All right. Moving on to our next question. Come from Harry. Again, he said X-Defiant as he did last week. And I said to him, you said this last week, what are you asking? Hey, just want to go opinions. Have you guys tried it? I think I'm the only one here that's played X-Defiant, correct?
I had no interest.
One of my friends at work said he's had a lot of fun with it. So I do have that one. He's a COD player. Gotten a little bit sick of that, but he said he's really been enjoying X-Defiant. He's got a lot of friends to play with him too. So
yeah, X-Defiant, outside of being a first-person shooter, is a good game. Is it the COD killer? No, it's not a COD killer.
But it does need to be a COD killer to be successful.
No, but I mean, just like Steam is taking over the PC market, COD is taking over everything with Warzone and whatnot. It is fun playing the different the factions. I do like the commentary during the game. I physically cannot play the game because I just keep dying because it's first-person shooter. But I've talked many times over the years about my experience playing first-person shooters. But it is a competent game. It is a good game. I just personally can't play it and put any real time into it. But I did try.
I believe in you. You beat Bouncy Bullets, you can beat X-Defiant.
Bouncy Bullets is a hell of a lot different game than that. Thomas says, your favorite arcade game? I can answer for Alex and yield and just say split second, but...
It's not an arcade game. It's an arcade razor.
It's an arcade style game. I think he's talking about arcade cabinets.
Yeah.
He said arcade racing game.
Okay, you didn't say that part earlier.
I'm sorry. Your favorite arcade racing game?
I mean, well, technically, mascot kart races are arcade style, right?
I would define a different thing, but I'll let it pass.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Blur was always sold as kind of like, not by Activision, but everyone always referred to it as adult Mario Kart. So, I mean, I don't know. Matt, what are your thoughts? Mascot kart racers count in this?
Going back to Sega Saturn, Daytona, USA.
Yeah! I do like that.
It's a good one.
Honestly, I'm going to say we'll leave the mascot kart racers as a separate category. I'll say MotorStorm.
Apocalypse or the first one?
Never played Apocalypse. I would say Pacific Rim.
Ooh,
Pacific Rift.
that's a good one too. Bro, Apocalypse is so good.
All right.
Yiel did like it. I just never picked it up.
Is that your answer, Darrell?
Oh, man. I think I'm going to have to go with NASCAR 2000 on the PC. That's a very unique answer for me.
Is that an arcade racer?
Yeah, well, it was super arcadey in the fact that, like, you could turn around on the track and you could drive backwards and just completely destroy your vehicle with, like, no regards to the rules. Like, it just allowed you to do whatever you wanted.
You could do that in today's NASCAR games.
The most recent ones I played, you weren't allowed to do that. So I'll take it back. That was a good one. I'll say the Need for Speed Underground 2.
All right. I'm going to say...
Tricky, I'm looking for a very specific answer from you.
So you're saying you think you know my answer already?
Yeah. I'll be surprised if no one says this, but I'll be particularly surprised if you don't say it.
I kind of feel like you want me to say Burnout Paradise.
Oh, ding, 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 ding.
But I'm not going to say Burnout Paradise.
You rotten scumbag.
I'm trying to remember the name of the game.
Hot Wheels Unleashed, which is a good one.
I think it was a Need for Speed game on the PS2. I want to say
Not Hot Pursuit, was it?
I think it was called Underground.
There was
Underground's more
Underground
recent,
2.
isn't it?
PS2, baby. OG Xbox.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that answer. All right, Thomas wants to know if you could afford an arcade shooter, which one would it be, and why mine would be Hogan's Alley?
Area 51.
That's a good answer.
I had that on the Sega Saturn with a light gun.
Yeah.
Dude, there was that challenge. You had to do something. I forget what it was, but you had to meet it, and you got was it a secret level or was it a special gun?
I've only ever
remember.
played it in the actual arcade, so I've never gotten to enjoy that game, like, for real.
All right, did everybody answer?
I said House of the Dead. I don't know if you heard me.
I didn't, but okay. All right, and Thomas's last question: what is one?
Matt didn't get to answer.
I thought Matt answered.
He answered he responded to me.
Oh, I apologize, Matt.
Silent scope. There, good.
Ooh.
Okay, I'll let it go. Thomas's last question: what is one trophy work too hard to get in collecting trophies?
All of them.
Saber, I love you to death, but you got to stop using the speech to text. Because it's not coming out correctly. What is one trophy too hard to get in collecting trophies? I guess he's asking, what is one trophy that makes collecting trophies hard?
I can give one that was like super hard and annoying. It didn't ruin it, but it definitely added 40 hours to my collecting, and that was the little Catwoman RNG power up in Injustice 2. You had to like win a bunch of matches, get a bunch of credits, get a bunch of loot boxes, and then you had to randomly get this particular move for Catwoman, then use that move on a certain person in a certain way. And I had every trophy in the game within the first 40, 50 hours, but ended up surpassing 80 hours playtime in the game just trying to get that one RNG trophy.
I will answer and just say any trophy that's associated with RNG, which is kind of like a piggyback on what Darrell's saying. Any trophy that I need the game to be lucky and give me, those are the kind of trophies I hate. If I can do a mission, if I can do something in the game and I'm failing, I feel a lot better than failing that than doing something 10,000 times, waiting for a particular item to drop or something like that. Anything associated with RNG and collecting trophies is a pain in the ass. Well, it's in general, it's a pain in the ass, but especially when it's tied to a trophy. And I'll give an example: is back in the day with the Plants vs. Zombies, there was a trophy that you had to get 3 diamonds in the roulette game, and it turned out that it was so hard to get, they actually went and patched the game that you can get the trophy for getting any 3 of a kind. It didn't have to be diamonds. Alex, your answer, sir.
I will say any trophy that requires you to win a certain number of matches online competitively, like the WWE 2K game I had to platinum. Those are really terrible.
I thought for sure you were going to say getting the 10,000 kills in Helldivers.
It was 100,000 kills, by the way, but no, it was not that one. Like you said, just grinding it out. You know, with a grindy trophy like that, it sucks, and it does eat up a lot of your time. It's not respectful of your time, but in the end, you know you're going to get it if you just put in the time. The competitive win this many matches online is just kind of it's a nightmare. I mean, you're completely dependent upon other people. I mean, really, at the end of the day, any trophies you're dependent upon other people to get it, especially when it's in an adversarial way and not like a cooperative way. Just reeks of bullshit.
Yeah, I was trying to think about other games that I've played recently where it's like completely RNG based, and those seem to be the ones that break me the most. Because that sucks.
All right, Matt, I know you don't really care about trophies and achievements, but is there anything that you find a pain in getting a trophy?
Anything that depends on other people's cooperation online.
Fair enough. All right. That is all the questions. Let's move on to our first topic of the week.
Tricky, please skip this. I sent you a text message. Please skip this.
I did not get that.
No, I said, like, I got to work tomorrow, and
I asked earlier. You didn't answer.
My bad. Sorry.
I don't want to be up here all night, so
all right.
We've already been up here 2 hours. So let's just make Darrell and our discussion about Jim Ryan the topic of the week, because the topic of the week here, I'm sorry, it's stupid. It's not what we're talking about.
10-4. Moving on. All right. So the reason why we had Darrell on is because Darrell kind of made some comments on. Matt stretching. Darrell, there was a conversation on our Facebook page in which Darrell kind of pointed out that he really did not agree with a lot of things that we said on, especially last week's show, but recent shows. And I wanted to give Darrell the platform to come on here and debate us. In response, Matt has welcomed this argument. And Alex chose not to spend time with his in-laws to have this conversation. So let's get into it. So the topic of the week is Darrell and only Darrell's obsession of Jimmy Ryan. So who wants to present first?
Well, I mean, we've had a chance to talk and we've made comments. Why don't we let Darrell talk first, since Darrell has been chomping at the bit to tell his side of the debate.
So let me do a little introduction before we get into it, because I do want to be respectful of Alex's time. I don't expect to change anyone's opinions here, nor do I expect anyone to walk out of disagreeing with me. But I listened to the show, and I've listened to the show now since 2015. That's a lot of years of haterade. That's a lot of time spent. That's a lot of years that I've listened to you guys.
What were you doing the first 3 years we were doing the show then?
I didn't know about you until the whole Hannah Montana conversation. So, I've spent a lot of time listening to the show, and I often, message you, Tricky. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was screaming at my radio riding down the road. Same way that Will does when he listens to my show. And this past week, I was like, what are we talking about here? I was listening to this last week's show, and there was a couple comments made specifically that I was just like, here we go. And I listen to the hate every week. I think a lot of people have jumped on the Kotaku bandwagon hating on Jimmy Ryan. On my show, The Loot Bros, it has been very easy to be a Jimmy Ryan fan because of the way people have talked about him over the course of his time as the CEO of PlayStation. So I did a little bit of research, and I went back and started pulling articles. I went on whatchamacallit, Reddit forums, and that's when it gets real toxic there in Reset Era. I just was kind of gauge in, like, what does everybody really think about this guy? And does it all stem from the same place? Is it all the same kind of like onesie-twosie comments that, because what is a failure? What is a success? Did he do a good job? Did he do a bad job? Now, I make a character out of Jimmy Ryan on my show, okay? Over the course of the past few years, he has went from Jim Ryan to Jimmy Ryan to the franchise Jimmy Ryan, franchise worldwide Jimmy Ryan. And I think by the time that we got, it was at one point in time, it was a good old franchise worldwide Jimmy Ryan, he who makes us whole. Like I was making this whole big production out of his name because A, it was getting a rise out of some of my co-hosts, and B, it was funny because like in reality, I don't think he's a super likable character. Okay, he's a CEO, he's a suit, he's clearly not a gamer. He's got a marketing background. He's been with the company for 30 years, so like he's kind of boring. But that's what made it fun, was because people are like, oh, I freaking hate this guy. Oh, my gosh, things happened that I don't like. And it's all Jimmy's fault. And I was like, oh, I can kind of see I can not. So I've heard what you guys said. If anyone needs more context, go back to last week's episode to get you caught up to speed. Because I really only want to address two things. And right before we went live, like literally 10 minutes before we went live, I did write down a few notes because I wanted to point a few things out. Okay. So last week, Yield said, and this is the one that I take the most umbrance with, is like, he said that Jimmy Ryan killed some franchises. So I did some research, and as a matter of fact, I feel like it's been said on this show more than once that he's a franchise killer. And I think Matt's leaned into that one a little bit. I did not find a single franchise that Jim Ryan can be held responsible for killing. So I would like to know, is there a franchise that you guys feel like he, in some way, shape, or form, misrepresented, mishandled? Did he kill something that I just missed completely?
I'll open up to Matt first.
Well, seeing as how the UK studio was responsible for the VR games, and that was killed shortly after he visited. I think the news was 3 days after he visited there and was there for a photo opportunity. Mm-hmm. That entire division got shuttered. Mm-hmm. So a specific franchise, no, but the ones responsible in that studio, yes.
I think that his influence has been more over studios as a whole as opposed to a franchise.
So I thought about that, right? I was like, surely he's from Merry Old England, long live the Queen. Okay, and he is visiting.
Whoops.
Was visiting some studios after he announced his retirement, not his firing, as some people like to phrase it. And I did notice that those studios got shuttered. Okay, shortly after. Those studios we've already established on this podcast, they were not producing. All right. And a certain Herman Hulst was technically over the first party portfolio during that time. So I thought about it. I was like, is this a Jimmy Ryan bungle or is this a Herman Hulst bungle? Because the more I started digging, the more I realized that like Herman's over that first party group and has been for several years. As a matter of fact, a lot of people were throwing a lot of shade at Jimmy Ryan for mismanaging Sony's money and buying Bungie, seemingly without knowing that Bungie was operating at a loss. But actually, that has been chalked up as a Herman Hulst, or at least he had a seat at the table.
All right, hold on. I want to comment from the chat. Saber says, let's see, Sly Cooper, Infamous, Eco, Imp Escape, and he says I can go on.
Well, I mean, there's also Twisted Metal, but I don't think that not choosing to make games in those series is the same as killing them off.
As a matter of fact, Sly Cooper and Infamous, those studios have said we're not working on those. And no one is remaking those. So now, does that mean that they sat down at Jimmy's kitchen table where he clearly conducted business making the PS5 the most successful hardware launch in the historic hardest time of putting out things production wise. Did they sit down at his table and say, hey, we want to make these games? And Jimmy said, no, I don't know, guys. I don't know that he's actually, if the studio said they're not working on it, if they're working on the games that they're working on, maybe somewhere down the line, someone has a text message from good old Jimmy that says, hey, no, you're not allowed to work on Sly.
You know what? I have a game, Days Gone. He killed Days Gone too.
Okay. Yeah, Days Gone was not greenlit. Okay. As a matter of fact, the guys that were over that one, they left.
I'm gonna come in and actually defend Jim Ryan in this case, because from what I read in my research, because you're not the only one doing research here, Darrell, is that Days Gone 2 wasn't necessarily pitched as a game. The developers said they would have liked to go on and make it, but it was never officially put forth as a project.
Actually, what they pitched was a noir-style Uncharted game focusing on Sully. That's what was pitched. So, again.
Oh, and I do. Real quick, Saber mentioned Sly Cooper, and I'm a massive Sly Cooper fan and would love to see Sly Cooper 5 come out. But with that game, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, the last game, was made for the PS3 by Sanzaru Games. So that wasn't even made by Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch seemingly themselves have moved on from Sly Cooper and want to continue making new games. They don't want to just get stuck in Sly Cooper. So that's more of a Sucker Punch moving on, and who else could we have to make it? And probably, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, as much as I like it, may not have been as commercially successful as Sony had hoped. So again, I don't think that's necessarily. I'm not trying to defend Jim Ryan, but I don't necessarily put that on a kill list for him.
No, but I would like to point out that we are already developing a pattern where we are unintentionally defending Jim Ryan, because when we actually dig into his credentials, gentlemen, they're quite good. They're quite good.
And I agree with me. That's going to be that'll be the last time that happens.
Sanzaru. I brought some show and tell as well for you, Alex, just because I've got some. I think things are cool, but whatever. I do. Yeah, Sanzaru actually, when they jumped into it, I actually did a little bit of digging, and there was actually some comments made years ago where
they were going to make Sly 5,
but people were not happy about the fact that Sanzaru got to make Sly Cooper Thieves in Time.
No, they wanted Sucker Punch to make it.
Reported via IGN, your favorite website, a long time ago that Sucker Punch was like, they didn't bury Sanzaru, but they weren't thrilled that they got to make that game. So, anyways, I didn't think I was wrong on that one, but I wanted to make sure, because when I hear someone's a franchise killer, I would like to know what franchise, because we did talk about, the last
Getaway. Again, shut in the London studio. That franchise is dead.
That would be, and I would give that one some credence and some merit, but we haven't got a Getaway game since PS2. That was long before Sean Layden got escorted out of the building, gentlemen. Sean Layden didn't get a retirement party.
Sean Layden was a national treasure.
Sean Layden didn't get Jimmy Ryan cookies, okay? That Sean Layden didn't get a special edition PS5 to look like the PS1 at his retirement celebration. No, Sean Layden was escorted out of the building, and the first time he was able to speak, he actually spoke against today's generation. Then he went to go work for Public Enemy number 1, Tencent, as a consultant. So Sean Layden's actually not a good guy. But Jimmy Ryan did, in fact, announce his retirement. Although there is a certain podcast that has said that they thought he might have been forced out, not naming any names, trade yours. But he got his 7-month, he said 7 months in advance, I'm going to be retiring. Hiroki Totoki's going to come in here. We're going to work together, develop a strategy and a new management system together. That's why you got two guys filling one man's shoes. And then he saw it to the end and then went out on his retirement without being escorted out of the building or formally fired. So, I would kind of chalk that one up as a bit of a W, not an L. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
There's lots of talk that Ryan was actually forced out the door.
There is actually no proof. Not even one.
There's no proof this lady was walked out the door.
Yeah, it was. Google it. Well, even your boy Colin Moriarty reported on it on Sacred Symbols. He even mentioned it on there. So
I will deviate from Darrell's points starting here, because Darrell liked to point out that maybe Herman Hulst was to blame for some of the troubles in the first party studios. But guys, correct me if I'm wrong, who did Sony just hire to oversee the software side of things, the first party studios, as a new CEO?
Oh, what's
the
his
incredible
name? Herman Holst.
Okay, so maybe Herman Holst wasn't fucking up as much as Darrell made it seem.
I would agree with you, actually. And maybe shutting down those studios that weren't performing wasn't actually a bad thing, was actually a net positive, because technically those studios were under Herman Holst during that time. See, I don't look at closing every single studio as a bad thing. I know that right now, gaming culture, it's like a studio closes and it's like, oh my God, this is literally the worst thing ever. Now, there's exceptions to that. So Tango Gameworks getting closed down by Microsoft recently, that was literally the best studio, in my opinion, they had. That was the one producing the games that actually resonated with me the most.
What about 343?
That's my bias right there. But they weren't system sellers. They weren't bangers, you know what I'm saying, as far as like the amount of units they sold. Okay.
What about your favorite studio 343 there, Darrell?
I hate 343. The fact they still exist drives me insane. But again, using this two companies as a bit of a parallel, I understand shutting down a non-producing studio like a Studio London, Studio UK, ones that are not producing in general, much less good games, or at least well-received games, well-selling games. So like you shut them down, but you got another studio in that same territory that's over 300 people strong in Firesprite. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing from Herman or Jim Ryan. I think it's here's our portfolio, here's our assets. Let's put our money where it matters. And there's the studio over here responsible for 3 upcoming games, opposed to 2 studios that aren't really doing anything but spinning their wheels. So I don't look at that as franchise killing. I think it's portfolio management. And again, it falls under Herman's responsibilities directly, and then he just got the promotion. So I would pitch that as a net positive, actually, not a failure on Jimmy's part. But again, he's not a likable guy, so it's easy to go, he's at the top. At the end of the day, the buck stops with him. I don't like the studio closed. It's all Jimmy's fault. Let's hate him for it. So,
all right, hold on. I want to give Matt a chance to bring up a point on his research if he wants a chance.
No, I'll go after Darrell's done. The one thing I will say, Darrell, is I took your suggestion. I Googled Sean Layden, and out of the man's mouth himself, it's a young person's activity. I felt this is a good time to put the pin in my legacy. That's why he left Sony. Was not walked out.
And I remember that coming out. I'll dig up, the report of him being walked out, because he didn't get the retirement party. He didn't get the big, hey, whatever.
Said, we'll greatly miss him.
It was I would say that too. I would totally say that.
I'm sorry, Darrell. Go ahead with your second point.
So, again, and this isn't Sean's exit versus Jimmy's exit being, a make or break. I just think they are very different. And, again, there's a certain podcast that framed Jimmy's exit as a net negative. Okay, as a matter of fact, someone who's not here has said multiple times that Jimmy was fired.
Oh, I said that too, or I suggested it.
Okay, well, you see what I'm saying, though. So again, I just don't think there's evidence to support that one. Okay, so that's why I brought it up. The next thing is I want to circle back to the beginning of the generation, because Matt had gotten to some murky water when it comes to what we view as success. Okay, and I started thinking about, well, what exactly does success look like, right? Especially in an industry where you're providing a product for a consumer. Okay, so you guys are familiar with the terms supply and demand, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when there is a supply of things but no demand, okay, so we would deem that as what? Unsuccessful? Like, I've got all this stuff but no one wants to buy it. That's a good thing or a bad thing? Yes or no? Good or bad?
I'm providing no opinion on this. I'm letting you speak for yourself.
Okay,
and your
so when
facts.
you have a demand for things and you have a little supply, all right, you would say that's probably a good thing, right? Well, the thing that you have is probably pretty good because the demand is so high for it that you either A, are artificially not supplying enough so that people will continue to want your thing and slow burn it, churn it out over time, or B, the thing is so hot, in fact, you can't keep up with the consumer expectations. But either way, whether it's A or B, I think that means it's a positive thing. There was a certain gentleman on this podcast last week that said that there was a device greenlit under Jimmy Ryan's tenure that I have in my hand right here, that it was a failure. Okay. Look how big that thing is, Alex. That thing's sweet, isn't it? Look at it.
I mean, I wouldn't spend money on it.
I mean, that's okay. I did it for you. Look at that.
I did it for you.
Look how big this thing is compared to my head. All right.
I mean, maybe you just have a small head.
It's a tiny head.
No, Darrell has a huge head.
This particular device was incredibly hard to get the first few months of its launch. Now, as soon as I made an open-ended statement on Facebook that this thing's been sold out since it came out, Matt immediately went to Best Buy and said, you can buy it now. I'm in 2 groups monitoring the accessibility of this portal. And right now, there are no reports that it is currently hard to get anymore. So Matt did fact check me in real time, but I will say for the first several months, I won't say all of the first several, or 7 months it's been out. But since November, this was a very difficult thing to get. As a matter of fact, 5 months, November, December, January, February, March, April.
Oh, I'm sorry.
May.
I thought it came out February.
No, it came out in November. But
you're right.
November 15th to be exact.
To get my hands on for the first few months. Okay, I couldn't even get one. Now there's several people in the Trophy Horrors community and in the Loot Bros community who have finally gotten their hands on them, and it is unanimous in this small sample size that this is a amazing device if you have the specific use case. Right?
Hold on.
Debating.
I will say Tross also has one. But he has a newborn. He says this has been a game changer and a life changer for him because it allows him to play games without having to turn on the TV and whatnot, especially when he's up late nights with his kid.
100%. And now I'll say it is, and I've told Matt this, I've told you this, Tricky. My listeners know it is a very specific use case. So if you don't need this, it is completely valueless. But I will say, not debating on the actual functionality of it, the sheer fact that it was hard to get based on how many were available would prove, or at least I would say disprove, the comments made here on this podcast last week that this was in fact a failure. It was actually wildly more successful than Sony had any idea of.
But you don't think that Sony, and I've said this to you in a private chat, you don't think Sony manufactured the demand by not putting out as many units? We'll never know. Same way we'll never know about Nintendo. We always suspect Nintendo creates artificial scarcity, but they've never come out and been like, bro, the reason why Nintendo sells is because we trick y'all into thinking you can't have it. I'll say this. Me personally, just as a consumer, someone who did production for so many years and was responsible for ordering components and making sure we had things, from before COVID, through COVID, and then after COVID, you hedge your bets. You have data that suggests I'll sell X amount of whatever it is. Okay. X amount of packs of cigarettes to Tricky. Okay. And then you think about like, okay, what does the cost look like to put out more cigarettes than Tricky will ever smoke, or the exact amount of cigarettes we think he'll smoke, or less than he actually will smoke, in hopes that he will continue to be waiting on us to provide more. It's all about hedging your bets and covering your butt. So me personally, I think they didn't believe in it enough. They wanted an engagement device, which is what they've often called this. And they're thinking, how can we keep you on your PlayStation longer, give you more ways to play your PlayStation? And this is a very cheap way of doing it. It's a 8-inch LCD screen slammed in the middle of a DualSense. But I would argue it's not cheap, because you can go out and buy a backbone for $100 and use the device that almost every person in the world already has in their cell phone.
It's so funny you say that, Tricky. It's almost as if I was waiting on you to bring up the backbone that I could show you that I have a backbone.
I'm not saying that the backbone is not useful, but when you compare having a backbone compared to having a portal, you're paying $100 more for them to give you a screen in the middle.
Okay.
And I would argue that the backbone is more user friendly because it uses your cell phone, which always has a connection, where the portal is limited to where you could use it, because wherever you're at, you need an internet connection.
That sounds good until you have them beside each other. And actually, the sunken cost fallacy of you can just pay $99 for this because you already have this, That's not necessarily true. Okay. Just because you have a phone doesn't mean you have one that's worth a turd. Okay. And you will quickly learn when you use a backbone, as someone who has two backbones, the Xbox and the PlayStation branded one, who uses them quite frequently. This right here sucks. It sucks. First off, it doesn't have any of the functionality of DualSense. Okay. So right off the rip, this right here is better. This right here is the same cost as a SCUF controller. Okay.
It's actually cheaper.
Technically cheaper, yes. But like, let's just say if we're just talking about this is a high-end controller, that's a high-end controller. This is right there. Technically, could be even less, could be a little bit more. But the screen resolution is night and day different. This screen right here is insanely better than this one right here. Now, this is an iPhone 12. Before that, I had my iPhone SE 2023 in there as my backbone, but it's so freaking small. And what I was telling you on the phone the other day when you and I were talking was that the issue with using a backbone and using remote play is that whether it's Android or iOS, it doesn't scale correctly to the screen. As a matter of fact, it forces you to use some of the touch functionality where you would actually have buttons like you do on your Portal. It makes you use the touchscreen functionality of those. And what happens is it buries that little bar down at the very bottom of your screen, and you can't. I mean, little things like I'll show you right here, just hitting the PlayStation Home button and then going down there to put it in rest mode. Like this whole menu is always, no matter what phone I've ever used, is always further down to the bottom, and you can't see it. You barely get a glimpse of it. So it's just not the same. It's one of those things, like I told you, and no one will ever experience, no one will understand the difference on a podcast with me waving stupid devices around and talking real fast because I'm excited, right? It's just like VR, Tricky, and you know this. You can tell someone how great VR is all day long. Until you put it on, it just doesn't click. And until this is in your hand comparatively, it's just not the same. So that's all I got to say about the Portal. But
so, Darrell, before you go on, I do want to point out that I don't think that the Portal selling above expectations or being sold out is an impressive or a W in your argument because we don't have sales figures. And without sales figures, you could sell 20 and sell out. It's all based on production. Since we don't have sales figures, which I tried to look up and couldn't find any, I saw the growth of handheld hardware overall, which the Portal contributed to, but I wasn't able to find sales figures. And without that key piece of data, it's not really a positive point to an argument.
But it's also not a failure as it was specifically stated on the show last week, which is what I was like, wait a second, how's that a failure?
Well, we will see.
The demand is higher than the supply. If it's a seesaw, all right, someone who did production for 12 years, no one says, hey guys, wait, our demand is higher than the production, is higher than the supply. We're failing miserably. But the only thing we're failing at
we will see if that continues because it continues to sell. It could be, hey, the PSVR 2 at one point seemed to be selling pretty well. And that, as we've seen, has been a complete failure.
And I would agree with that. I would say they wildly overpriced it. Maybe they had to, but I would definitely chalk that up as a loss, saying, hey, you have mismanaged this one. You're pumping out games, but you got one first-party game that people really could gravitate to. And we all know the history of these peripherals and these handhelds. And whenever you don't have steady first-party content, you really don't give people a ton of reason to come to it. And it's wildly overpriced. I would say, you know what? You guys are 100% correct on that one. Bad boy Jimmy.
Okay. I was going to ask you who's watched that come under, and you just.
Oh, that's 100%. That's a Jimmy Ryan joint. As a matter of fact, I'll even go a step further because under Jimmy Ryan's tenure, everything's wildly more expensive. As a matter of fact, Matt likes to call him, lion crying, nickel and diamond Jimmy Ryan, right? And to an extent, I can totally see that. If in fact, gaming wasn't just slightly elevated across the board. I think PlayStation got in front of it. They raised their prices first. Many people have followed suit. They raised their subscription price. Many people followed suit. Game Pass, hello, getting ready to go up again.
Some people canceled their PlayStation Plus subscriptions.
Yeah, and again, I can't say those are good things. And God, I love Jimmy Ryan because things are more expensive. No, it sucks. From the consumer's perspective, it really does blow. But so does also my grocery bill, my electricity bill, my Game Pass bill, my Netflix bill. As a matter of fact, every subscription service I have is inflated at this point. So is that a PlayStation problem? Maybe. Is that an industry? Is that an economic problem globally right now? I would say absolutely.
All right, let's give Matt a chance to respond to, because he's the one that called the portal a failure, and he kind of smiled when he was called out. So, Matt, I want to give you the floor to respond.
All right, so I'll try to make all of these points quick. I don't recall saying it was a failure, so we're going to say that right off the bat. No, here's my issue with the portal. Is it a neat little device? Yes. I think it's wildly overpriced. I think the compatibility issues with it are a problem. The fact that you can't hook up any Bluetooth headset. It has to be Sony's specific, expensive, what was it, $250 for their proprietary connection?
For PlayStation Link.
I think especially for a device, when you think of the purpose, I forget, Darrell, does it have an audio jack to put in regular earphones? Okay, so at least it has that.
It's loud as balls too. Like the actual speaker inside, it's really great.
Because I just think of the issue with, why are you using it? You're using it because you don't have access to your actual TV that your PS5 is on. So therefore, you may not want to have the audio playing in your surrounding environment. So you put in your headset, your plugs, which is great. But if you want your wireless, you have to get Sony's proprietary thing. And we've seen Sony make that mistake in the past with the portable, with the Vita, having proprietary memory, having proprietary anything is a problem.
And can I point out that I think them making the new earbuds that they released that only really work. I mean, they work with the PS5 as well, but the fact that no other headphones could work with the portal other than those headphones, I think was a bad business move as well.
And nobody's talking, because there's no sales figures for those earbuds anyway, so you don't know if that's doing well or not. But $250, I know there's some pretty decent tech in there, just like I know there's pretty decent tech in the VR2. The reason it's priced that, for all of the features that are in the PSVR 2, that is actually a reasonably priced VR headset. And the smartest thing they're doing is trying to make it open up so that way it can be used for PC. But we all agree the PSVR 2 headset is a failure, that they stopped production to let sales catch up with their stock. And the issue with the portal and the sales, again, since we don't know, we just know that scalpers took advantage of it for the first couple months, just like they took care of the PS5. PSVR 2 was not scalped. Nobody really wanted the damn thing. But they still did, I think, about $1 million sales.
Scalpers don't buy things to sit on them, right? Scalpers
no, correct.
But that resell them.
The question becomes, if scalpers didn't buy as many as they did, would those have still been sold or bought up by regular people? I like to think, probably a good portion of scalper sales would have gone there.
Would prove that usually when scalpers buy things, they buy them to resell them, and you rarely find a scalper sitting on a mountain of an item that didn't move.
So this is where I actually get into real sales figures and where I talk about the success of PlayStation under Jimmy Ryan versus Sean Layden and everybody else. The understanding, the PS5 coming out during the pandemic, and the hardware restrictions that they were under on supply chain. So I understand that. And I preface all this with that. I will say, currently in the first 39 months, as I'm sure anybody here has seen, the PlayStation 4 has outsold the PS5 in the first 39 months of their life. And at the beginning, the PS5
a million units.
Okay, hold on.
By 1 million units, yes.
Okay, but I think it's worth noting, and I'm not here to defend in either way. It is worth noting that production on the PlayStation 5 was halted because they couldn't get the chips.
And it's $100 more expensive for the base model.
And that's where I'm prefacing this all. I understand that. I am saying that with the understanding that supply chain issues were extremely limited during that era. That the PS4 was cheaper on the offset and therefore sold more. What I'm saying is between months 25 and 27, either things got super tight or there was some other production issue, because the PS4 massively outsold the PS5 by unreasonable amounts at the same time period in month 26. Sales for the PS5 have slowly been closing that gap, but they did take a dip around month 38. So
28, you
we're
mean?
now, I'm sorry?
28, you mean?
No, 38. If I'm looking at the chart that I have here.
I thought the original sentence you said 36 weeks.
Yes, I said 26 months is when there was a massive hit to the PS5's productivity.
Sorry.
Month 38, there was a massive dip, and not anywhere near month 26, but month 38, there was a big dip in PS5's productivity and sales compared to PS4. It's still struggling to make up that difference. And yes, it's only 1 million, Darrell, but in understanding that during global pandemic, Jimmy Ryan could have been selling a ketchup flavored popsicle to people in white gloves, and they would have bought it. They would have eaten anything up during this period. So all those sales are definitely, they're mitigating, but are also a contributing factor to these sales numbers. Going back to the overall issues of Jim Ryan, you're right. He's not a very likable guy. He's said numerous things that people don't like. He's called the old PS1 and PS2 era games outdated. We don't believe in generations. We want people to stay with the newest consoles. Again, the 900 PlayStation employees laid off nearing the end of his tenure. He wanted to close the legacy PSN stores, but they ended up keeping them open for the outcry that happened. He's wanted to shutter things left and right because at heart, he is a financial guy. He understands that you need growth, and that led to the idea that, okay, well, we need to develop 12 live service games that bring in stream revenue into the company. And then they ended up canceling or delaying 6 of those. The only true PS5 exclusive games that we want to talk about, when we talk about the reason for owning a console, are those exclusive games. And many of them highly rated. I'll give you that. Jimmy Ryan had some studios that put in there that brought out the highly rated games. And you got Astro's Playroom, Demon's Souls, Destruction All-Stars, which was a failure, all things being equal. Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2, Last of Us 2 Remastered, Final Fantasy Rebirth, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, Horizon Call of the Mountain, which was their VR, which was so-so. And then before they went PC, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, Last of Us Part 1, and, I'm sorry, I forgot to add in Foam Stars there at the end. Splatoon Sony Edition. The thing I'll leave it off, and I'll close my point out because I know in the interest of time, I don't think he's unsuccessful. I just think some people have hyped him up more than he needed to be. And I know you have a whole shtick of Jim Ryan. Like I said in our chat, some of this stuff is the hyperbole we spawn is to combat the butt kissing that happens on that side of the pond. I just think in history, given what he did during the pandemic, managed to get a console launch out there that anybody was going to buy anyways. I just think in the end, he became a so-so guy. I don't think he's the bee's knees of CEOs, but I also don't think he's the worst horrible CEO Sony's ever had. And that's where I'll leave that.
Yep. I agree with nearly everything you said because, you mentioned a lot of those games that, the exclusive games or whatever being even split between PS4 and PS5, which one would argue that would make the PS5 even less desirable, and yet still here it is trailing its predecessor within nearly a million units, which had me bring up my own graph, actually. So the top 5 selling consoles of all time: PlayStation 2, Nintendo DS, Nintendo Switch, Game Boy, and PlayStation 4. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yep, no, number 5 being PlayStation 4. So here we are at the same point in time in this life cycle with a worse economy. Because if you look back at the economy we had, even globally, when the PS4 was as successful as it is, things were wildly different. Post-pandemic, okay, the thing is more expensive. And all of the exclusives are split between generations. I would argue that we are sitting in a extremely, if not the most successful generation we've experienced to this date, with more factors against it than for it. And we only have one man to thank for that. And that's good old franchise worldwide, Jimmy Ryan, he who makes us whole.
All right. In the interest of trying to wrap this up so we don't spend too much time, because Saber's having a conniption in the chat.
This is all the things we didn't even talk about yet.
All right. So
Patreon.
yeah, I was gonna say we can continue this on the Patreon episode, which, judging by the chat from Saber, it's probably not gonna be listened to. But we can continue this on the Patreon episode. Alex, I'm gonna give you final thoughts on this, and then we're gonna wrap up the show.
Like Matt, I don't think that Jim Ryan was unsuccessful. I think that, early on in his tenure, or even halfway through, I would have said he did a good job. I think that, one, the PlayStation launch itself, yes, during a difficult time during the pandemic, makes everything much harder. But I think the PlayStation 5 itself is going to sell anyway. Like Matt said, you're in Whole Foods and apples are going to sell. That's just produce is just going to sell. You don't even have to market it. So I don't give Jim Ryan credit for that. I'll give Jim Ryan credit for helping get it out the door. But the success of the PlayStation 5 is on the PlayStation 5 itself. It's more on Mark Cerny than anybody else. My opinion, though, of Jim Ryan really started to turn when we started to see studios, when we have, big gaps in PlayStation 5 games, when we don't know as well studio exclusives. Sony's always given us a really good roadmap of the games that are coming out, and right now we have the worst possible roadmap in the history of PlayStation family, and that's because of decisions Jim Ryan made. Darrell talked about Herman Helst being, on top of the studios and the first party thing, and being really the guy who's kind of overseeing those. But who was leading the way and the strategy? It was Jim Ryan. So this live service push, I understand wanting to do that, but to have so many games and just jump so deeply into the pool when you're just kind of new to this was a massive mistake. And, having to cancel so many games, I know that there are a lot of games canceled that we don't ever hear about, but clearly that push for live service has hurt their first party portfolio because Naughty Dog has been completely mismanaged. We saw their multiplayer online game get canceled, and I cannot remember the last time a Naughty Dog game was ever canceled. We've seen layoffs touch every single, not just studio closures, but layoffs touch every single studio, including Insomniac, who's been incredibly successful this generation, including Guerrilla Games, who has been very successful in introducing not just this generation, but Horizon on the PS4. So Jim Ryan's strategy and vision for PlayStation set it up for right now, which is really barren when it comes to first-party games. Yes, I know we have Helldivers, but made by a studio, Arrowhead, that's not Sony-owned. And you need to make partnerships to help fill the gaps. But there's a lot of gaps in PlayStation first-party titles right now, and it's never been worse. And I really think that Jim Ryan's strategy of going so heavy into live service was a massive mistake and a reason why PlayStation is where they are, and probably honestly led to a lot of the problems studios, led to studio layoffs. So that's really where my opinion of Jim Ryan really turned, is the whole live service push, because that strategy has so far been a failure, and I think has set Sony where they are now, where they kind of need to dig themselves out of a hole. Look, they're not as maligned as Microsoft, but they most definitely they're not as strong as they could be if they just focus on getting out games and not just following this trend quite so heavily. So that's really where I look at Jim Ryan and his success. Yes, he's gotten a lot of PlayStation console games on the television screen.
Oh, we lost Alex.
Legacy, because that has been just this white whale that he has chased like Captain Ahab, and it hasn't worked out very well. And whether he was fired or whether he retired, that's a stain on his resume. So that's really where my opinion of him turned.
All right, I will defend Jim Ryan on one point, and to something you said, Alex, is the fact that we don't really know what's coming down the pipeline with PlayStation. I think that's an industry-wide thing, and I think that's also a product of we really got our information at events like E3, where they did the press conferences, and we kind of knew what was coming in the years to come because they would spend an hour and a half to 2 hours outlining all their plans for the future. And now we get these bite-sized chunks, like the PlayStation Direct or the State of Plays, where they don't really go in depth the way they did in the E3 press conference. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but
Sony does dictate how many of those they do a year, and they do control. So they control how many are a year. It's not like
correct. But I think it's a lot easier to produce one 90-minute to 2-hour show than it is to produce 4 or 5 of those shows over the course of the year. The fact that we didn't get one in September was weird. There was rumors we were going to get one by the end of May. I mean, we're 4 days away from the end of May right now. It could be early June. We do know we're getting a conference with Microsoft like the second week of June. I don't know the exact date. I'm not defending Sony. I'm not defending Jimmy Ryan on this. I'm just saying to put the fact that we don't know what's coming is I don't think that's a Jimmy Ryan problem. I think that's an industry problem because of the way E3 has gone away and we don't get those press conferences anymore. That's
again tricky. They have plenty of opportunities throughout the year to show us things. It's not a lack of platform. It's the fact that they don't have anything to show.
The alternative is they could do like Xbox did, show off 18 games. So you're going to get one of these every single month. And you got 2 over the course of a year. And they've been backpedaling ever since. I think a quiet Sony works for this day and age. It's not my favorite. I don't think it's indicative of anyone's success or failure. We'll get information when we get it. None of us are entitled to have it personally. So that's my opinion.
All right. I'm sorry, Darrell, but I do want to respect Alex's time because so I do want to put a pin in this conversation. We can continue this on a Patreon episode. I'll get together with Alex and Matt, and we'll figure out when we can all sit down together. I'll probably get Yield involved in this, but I'm just waiting for Alex to come back because he walked away from the record real quick. Saber does says E3 was a joke with being a waste of time and money. Control your space. I don't agree, Saber. E3 was a good event. The unfortunate thing is a lot of people, and I've said this on the show before, a lot of people don't realize that when you watch the press conferences for Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, those actually were not E3 events officially. Those were press conferences they gave out prior to E3 starting because it was always on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, where E3 normally started on the Monday. E3 as an industry event was great. E3 kind of, in my opinion, really started failing when they started letting the general public in and trying to be more like PAX and whatnot, and that's where it really started bogging down. I see Alex come running back now. I'm waiting for him to put his headset on. And one more chat. Alex, I don't know if you know, but during your answer, before your internet kind of cut out a little bit, and Roboto in the chat says, did you see that Jimmy Ryan sent to Alex's feed to cut into Alex's feed? So he's saying that you were bad talking to him and Jimmy Ryan cut you out.
Hey, we know Jimmy Ryan's got nothing but time on his hands now, so I'm sure he could do something like that. He's got enough money. He can pay somebody some internet ninjas to come and fuck with my AT&T service. Although it's more likely that AT&T shit the bed again and just continued with their shitty service.
All right, let's wrap up the show. Let's do some shout outs. Matt, we're going to start with you, sir.
Darrell, thank you for coming on and engaging in actually what turned out to be a very good discussion on the successes and failures of Jimmy Ryan. And I'm not highlighting one or the other.
More failures than successes.
I think there's something to be said that, again, fact checking each other, keeping each other honest, and the hyperbola of celebrating and jeering. But thank you for coming on tonight. Alex, thank you for staying on so late despite working tomorrow. And shout out to Tricky for putting this all together. Shout out to the Channel 3 community. Make sure you go to channel3.gg to gamify your social media. And finally, shout out to my wife, V. Thank you for everything you do on and off the show.
All right. Neptune Princess just entered the chat. Just so before she says anything in the chat, we're ending the show right now. You're gonna have Alex back soon. Darrell, your shout outs.
Thanks guys for having me on. I often hype things up and get my wrestling persona going, and then I do like to have actual intelligent civil conversations. Shout out to Jimmy Ryan for beating the competition in his tenure 5-1 in console sales against the Xbox. Thank you for the Portal. Thank you for the PS Classics. Thank you so much for all the wonderful things you gave us. Definitely, guys, go check out my YouTube channel. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers now, and then we're going to destroy hundreds of copies of Connect Adventures as for our 1,000 subscriber celebration. Kids and I like to go video game hunting. We like to film it, and then we like to turn around and go on Whatnot and sell it all to you guys. Mine's like 2 or 3 games we keep.
What's the current count of Connect Adventures?
Oh, we're over 100. I quit counting at 100. We have a local video game store that told me they've got 60 plus of them now. I don't know how many, but he just keeps taking them in as trades. And the day we go to film, we're going to that store. We're buying whatever he has as kind of the last lot, because I have not been buying them. I haven't been filming and buying at his store specifically for this reason, that he wants to be a part of it. So we're going to go to a video game store. We're going to buy, it could be 100 by the time we get there. He's already given us a price on them, and because we're going to take what we have, which is 100 plus, could be another 100, who knows. We're going to go destroy them. And then we're on to the next series that we have planned.
Roboto in the chat says, and there's the filthy reseller content. Alex, your shout outs.
Give a shout out to the listeners, our awesome community, the fuel to the fire, this trophy horse. Thank you all very much. I know we had Roboto and we had Saber in the chat, so thank you all for showing up tonight. And anyone who helps push the podcast forward, thank you all very much for your continued support. Shout out to my host. I can't figure out how to get on camera best here. Tricky and Matt, shout out to Yield who couldn't show up, and a shout out to Darrell for coming on, despite the fact that he knows that the majority of the people on this podcast don't have the best opinion of Jim Ryan, but willing to come on and have a civil discussion. Appreciate your time, sir. And last but not least, give a shout out to my awesome and loving girlfriend, Ashley. I love you, hun. And that is mine.
I'll make mine quick. I'll just give a shout out to the goddess, Sweet Mama D. Shout out to the New York Rangers, 2 overtime wins in a row. Taking 2-1 series lead.
Making Tricky sweat.
Oh, bro, my heart was racing when they went to overtime again. Because there was a stat that said the last time the Rangers, anytime the Rangers scored 4 goals in the playoffs, they were 40-0-1.
No. Yeah, they basically, whenever they gave up, they had so many consecutive losses when they gave up 4 goals, and it was 4-4. So,
Darrell, you're a dick. for the audio listeners, Darrell's holding up his sign says, "Thank you, Jimmy." No, it was when they gave up 4 goals, they didn't win a game, and then when they scored 4 goals, they always won. So it was kind of that stat kind of got to me.
He's got plenty of time to play with his little Jimmy now.
Saber says, "When have been mute for a while if I didn't show up?" I don't know. Shout out to all the listeners. Shout out to everybody else. And until next week, happy trophy hunting.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Later.
The theme song is Venus by the band Even off their album Zenith. Permission granted by the band and 12 Stone Records. You can find them on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/evenphilippines.